Marcus Reynolds gazed out from the expansive windows of his penthouse suite at the Four Seasons Boston, idly swirling a glass of 30-year-old scotch. The city lights twinkled beneath him, resembling a field of scattered diamonds. Yet his thoughts drifted far away. Another successful merger, another billion-dollar deal sealed, yet the triumph felt empty. At 42, he possessed all the wealth one could desire. Yet the void that had shadowed him for the last 7 years appeared to deepen with every day that went by. The gentle ping of his phone captured his focus. Yet another communication from the board, extending their congratulations on the recent acquisition. Marcus placed his drink on the table and adjusted his tailored Tom Ford suit with precision. The acclaimed dining establishment, Saltwater, awaited eagerly. At least he could savor a peaceful dinner before the press conference tomorrow. The descent in the elevator was quiet, interrupted only by the soft whir of the machinery. Marcus glanced at his reflection in the gleaming brass walls, noticing the silver strands weaving through his dark hair at the temples, while stress lines marked his eyes, a testament to the pressures he faced despite his routine spa visits. 7 years of immersing himself in his work had taken a toll on him, yet it felt preferable to ruminating on his losses. The maitre d' instantly identified him, leading him to his familiar secluded corner table that offered a panoramic view of the Boston Public Garden. "Would you like your regular Bordeaux, Mr. Reynolds?" Marcus nodded, his gaze drifting over the evening's menu, yet his mind was elsewhere. In that moment, he caught the sound of a laugh that seemed to freeze the very fabric of time, a haunting echo from his history that he had desperately sought to erase. His head jerked up, scanning the restaurant with intent. There, 3 tables away, sat Catherine Kate, his former spouse. She appeared just as he recalled, but in a way that radiated an even greater beauty. Her honey-blonde hair shimmered in the warm light, her smile as bright as the day they first crossed paths in law school. Yet it was not merely her presence that sent chills coursing through him. On either side of her sat 2 children, a boy and a girl, likely around 6 or 7 years of age. The boy's solemn demeanor and deep hair reflected his own, while the girl's delightful laughter was unmistakably Kate. The similarity was unmistakable. Marcus clutched the table's edge, his knuckles paling as the revelation struck him with the force of a tangible impact. 2 of a kind. Yet he was unaware of the existence of twins. The sommelier glided over with the Bordeaux, yet Marcus hardly paid attention. Thoughts surged through him, 7 years since the separation, recalling the timing of their final month together, Kate's peculiar actions just before she departed. All his previous assumptions about their separation were abruptly transformed, uncovering a harsh and painful truth. The girl, his daughter, turned slightly, her profile so recognizable it stirred a deep ache in his chest. Then the boy glanced upward, his gaze locking with Marcus's from across the restaurant. Those eyes, his eyes, expanded with intrigue, as if perceiving a bond he had yet to grasp. Kate turned her attention to where her son was looking, and Marcus observed as the color faded from her face. The wine glass in her hand quivered just a bit, the sole indication that she felt as unsettled as he did. At that instant, Marcus Reynolds, the individual who wielded authority over multi-billion-dollar enterprises with just one signature, experienced an overwhelming sense of helplessness. 7 years of meticulously built barriers collapsed as a torrent of questions surged through his thoughts. How could she possibly hide this from him? What granted her the authority? And above all, what action would he take in response to it now? The ensuing moments elongated like warm taffy as Marcus and Kate held a silent standoff across the restaurant. Memories surged within him, recalling their final exchange 7 years prior. Her tears, his bewilderment, and the pile of divorce papers that lay between them. "I've reached my limit," she had declared. "Our desires diverge." Now those words took on a new meaning. Kate bent slightly to share a secret with the twins, then rose with an air of composed assurance. "Emma, Ethan, kindly complete your desserts. Mommy would like to have a quick chat with someone." Marcus observed her as she adjusted her navy silk dress, approaching him with the same resolute elegance that lingered in his memory from their courtroom skirmishes. "Some things remain constant. Is that you, Marcus?" Her voice remained calm, Yet he noticed the subtle shake in her hands as she paused at his table. Maybe we could have a conversation in a more secluded setting? It was an order. He remained silent, trailing behind her as she navigated the restaurant towards a secluded nook by the bar. The delicate scent of jasmine that she had worn throughout their marriage trailed behind her, awakening memories he had struggled to forget. Their thoughts. It was not a question. His voice emerged with an unexpected grit, feelings he struggled to identify looming over him. 7 years, Kate. 7 years of their existence. Departed. He observed her compose herself, straightening her shoulders as she consistently did prior to presenting a challenging legal case. Indeed, they belong to you. Kate met his gaze head-on, chin raised defiantly. Emma and Ethan. Are they really turning 7 next month? She hesitated, selecting her words with precision. 2 weeks after filing for divorce, I discovered I was pregnant. You were in Singapore finalizing the Matthews merger. The merger you mentioned would ultimately establish Reynolds Corp's presence in the industry. Marcus experienced every word as if it were a tangible strike. So, you really believed I shouldn't be informed? That I was entitled to be their father? His meticulously maintained exterior started to show signs of wear. Oh my goodness, Kate. I've missed so much. Initial strides, inaugural utterances, the beginning of academic adventures. You made your decision long before I discovered the twins. Kate interrupted, her voice laced with lingering hurt. 3 overlooked anniversaries. Spending Christmas in solitude as you dedicated your time to work during the festive season. The day I lost my father, you sent flowers with your assistant's signature, as you were too busy to attend the funeral. She inhaled unsteadily. Upon learning of my pregnancy, I faced a pivotal decision. I decided to shield them from the affection of a father who would invariably prioritize his empire above all else. Marcus prepared to voice his disagreement, but the words faltered and fell silent as he caught sight of the twins framed in the restaurant's archway. Emma meticulously sliced her chocolate cake into perfect squares, mirroring the way he approached his own confections. Ethan was engrossed in what seemed to be a substantial chapter book, his focused demeanor reflecting the serious expressions captured in Marcus's childhood photographs. They're brilliant, Kate murmured, her eyes following his gaze. Emma is already 2 grades ahead in math. Ethan possesses reading skills commensurate with a high school education and aspires to pursue a career in corporate law. A faint smile graced her lips. He expresses a desire to assist organizations in making positive contributions to the world. The unmistakable pride in her voice stirred something profound within Marcus's chest. What brings you here, Kate? He finally asked, pulling his gaze from his children, his offspring. The phrases lingered, unfamiliar and distant in his thoughts. The 4 Seasons presents a setting that's anything but ordinary. He intended no accusation, yet old habits proved difficult to shake off. Ethan clinched the state chess championship, she responded. This dinner was his reward. He selected the restaurant personally after discovering the chef's profile in a magazine. She paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. He shares your traits, constantly delving into research and strategizing well into the future. The burden of all he had overlooked weighed heavily on Marcus's shoulders. Chess tournaments, mathematical accomplishments, literary achievements, a myriad of fleeting instances that were meant for him to observe, to revel in. The frustration he sought to direct at Kate continually faded, giving way to a more profound and painful feeling. Remorse. Kate mentioned softly that they would be in town for 3 days. A robotics competition is set to take place tomorrow at MIT. She brushed away an unseen crease from her dress, a familiar sign of her anxiety that he recalled vividly. I understand that you might feel a strong dislike towards me at this moment, and I completely acknowledge that you have every reason to feel that way. However, Marcus, they are content. They are cherished. They mirror your essence in the most wonderful ways. The ways I fell in love with before the venture consumed all my thoughts. Just as Marcus was about to reply, Emma's voice echoed through the restaurant. Mother. Ethan's acting strange about his food once more. The unmistakable frustration in her voice, echoing Kate's, caused his heart to tighten. Kate shut her eyes for a moment, and he could observe the silent struggle unfolding on her face. "Go," he murmured softly. Yet this dialogue is far from finished. Kate gave a slight nod, pivoting back toward their table. Marcus observed her resolve the minor disagreement with effortless grace, recalling how she had previously eased tensions in high-stakes negotiations with that same soothing command. In the solitude of the alcove, Marcus retrieved his phone, swiftly canceling the press conference scheduled for tomorrow with a series of rapid texts. After 7 long years, Reynolds Corp found itself in a position of anticipation. He found himself reminiscing about the day he first crossed paths with Kate at Harvard Law, both of them driven first-year students with aspirations of making a difference in the world. In a spirited debate on corporate ethics, she confronted him, her fervor for justice perfectly aligning with his ambition for success. They found themselves united in marriage 18 months later. The initial years had unfolded just as they had envisioned. Kate achieving partnership at her firm, Marcus transforming his father's struggling company into a formidable force. They had discussed the possibility of having children in the future when the moment felt appropriate. Yet the promise of someday continued to be deferred as Marcus pursued larger deals and more ambitious acquisitions. He was convinced that Kate comprehended his aspirations, that she was aligned with his dream of creating something remarkable prior to embarking on the journey of family life. His eyes wandered once more to the twins. Emma was now articulating her thoughts with lively gestures, her hands moving in a manner reminiscent of Kate's during the closing arguments. Ethan absorbed every word, his head bobbing slightly as he carefully folded his napkin, a quirk that Marcus recalled from his own youthful desire for neatness. A recollection emerged, vivid and excruciating. Kate lingered in the doorway of his office late one night, attired for the anniversary dinner he had completely overlooked. "I refuse to be just a footnote in the narrative of your triumph, Marcus," she had declared. He had vowed to atone for his actions, already redirecting his focus to the glow of his computer screen. 2 months later, she had initiated the process of divorce. Marcus opened his calendar app, sifting through a timeline filled with meetings, deals, and acquisitions. How many of these so-called pivotal moments would he now exchange for first steps, first words, first everything? The irony was not lost on him. He had dedicated 7 years to constructing an empire for children he had never known were there. Kate's voice floated through the air, elucidating the intricacies of polynomial equations to Emma. The familiar tone she had employed years earlier, guiding him as he got ready for the bar exam. Marcus observed Ethan as he retrieved a small notebook, scribbling something with focused determination. The boy's posture and the way he gripped his pen reflected a familiar echo of his own past. Once more, his phone vibrated, the board seeking his affirmation regarding the announcement scheduled for tomorrow. In a surprising turn of events, Marcus Reynolds, renowned for his constant availability, decided to turn off his phone for the very first time in his career. The empire could bide its time. He had 7 years of fatherhood to reclaim, provided Kate and the twins would allow it. In that serene alcove, observing his newly embraced family, Marcus finally grasped the essence of what Kate had conveyed about the myriad of meanings in life. He had been constructing a legacy of wealth and influence, while she had been cultivating something far more invaluable. A tapestry woven with affection, evolution, and endless potential. The pressing inquiry at hand was if there existed space in their lives for both. If you're finding this video enjoyable and crave more content of this nature, don't forget to tap that subscribe button and activate the notification bell. In that manner, you will be sure to catch all the incredible tales we have on the horizon. Your support truly enables the channel to flourish and allows us to continue delivering more of what you enjoy. Thanks a lot. Marcus continued to grapple with his thoughts as Kate drew near once more, her demeanor cautious. "They've been inquiring about you," she murmured gently. Ethan observed the similarity. "He has a keen sense for that, doesn't he?" She turned her wedding ring around her finger. "No." Marcus suddenly noticed that her mother's ring had shifted to her right hand. Certain habits endured despite the end of a marriage. "What did you say about me to them? Concerning their father?" The thought had been simmering in his mind since the initial jolt of realization. Kate's eyes fell to the ground, only to rise once more with a newfound resolve. The truth, primarily. You were exceptional, passionate, and there was a time when our love for each other ran deep. At times, grown-ups face tough decisions. She took a moment, gathering her reflections. They are aware that you manage a substantial enterprise, even though I never referred to Reynolds Corp directly. Ethan completed a school report on sustainable business practices last month. He referenced your company as a case study, unaware that it belonged to you. The irony of his son unknowingly delving into his creations left Marcus feeling a tightness in his chest. Is there animosity towards me? The question emerged softly, betraying a fragility he seldom revealed. Kate's expression became a touch gentler. They don't dislike you, Marcus. It's impossible to harbor hatred for someone who was never truly known. Her words were not intended to hurt, yet they pierced through with unexpected intensity. They have a keen interest in you, it seems, particularly now that they have laid eyes on you. Emma has already discerned the reason behind your lingering gaze. Marcus brushed his fingers through his hair, a fidget from his law school days that he believed he had left behind. I would like to meet them, Kate. Correctly. Not as an unfamiliar face in a restaurant, but as... He was still unable to articulate the word father. It seemed like a designation he had not truly deserved. Kate started to explain, "It's not that simple," but her words were cut short by a soft voice coming from behind her. "Mother, could this be him?" Ethan stood there, the chess championship medal draped around his neck, his dark eyes filled with intensity and curiosity. Emma trailed closely, brimming with an almost palpable energy that seemed ready to burst forth. Kate's meticulously built barriers started to fall apart as her children, along with their offspring, awaited a response. Marcus stood still as Kate lowered herself to meet his gaze, her professional demeanor set aside in a moment of pure nurturing instinct. "Absolutely, my dear. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Marcus Reynolds." "He is." She looked up at Marcus, a lifetime of intricate feelings exchanged in that glance. "He is your father." Emma, always eager to take action as her mother had noted before, moved ahead. "Were you truly unaware of our existence? It seems that's the impression I got from the way you glanced at us earlier." Your expression mirrored that of Mom's when she's genuinely taken aback, much like the time we were accepted into the advanced program at school. The straightforwardness of the inquiry, presented with an almost naive insight, almost unraveled Marcus entirely. He knelt down too, aligning himself with them in the same way Kate had. "No, I didn't know," he confessed, his voice thick with feeling. "Yet if I had..." He gazed at Kate, his eyes silently seeking her approval to proceed. She gave a barely noticeable nod, and he redirected his attention to the twins. "Had I been aware of your existence, the course of events would have taken a different turn." It wasn't a blame directed at Kate, but rather an admission of his own shortcomings. "I wandered off course for a time, concentrating on the misguided forms of achievement. However, witnessing the two of you at this moment, he found himself needing to take a moment to collect his thoughts. Your greatness surpasses any accomplishment I could have envisioned." Ethan observed him with a focus that Marcus saw reflected in his own gaze. "My mother mentioned that you assist businesses in improving," he said thoughtfully. "You repair what is damaged and restore its proper function." The boy traced the medal on his chest with a contemplative air. "Do you believe that some things that are broken cannot be repaired?" The inquiry resonated deeply, its significance extending well beyond the mere arrangement of letters, leaving a profound mark on Marcus's very essence. He was on the verge of replying when he caught sight of Kate wiping away tears, making an effort to conceal them from the twins. In that moment, he perceived not merely his ex-wife, but a mother who had shouldered the weight of their shared history in solitude for 7 long years. Marcus locked eyes with his son, fully aware of the significance of this moment. The most crucial matters can always be resolved, Ethan. At times, it requires a blend of time, patience, and the courage to take that leap. He cast a quick look at Kate before proceeding. The key lies in identifying what genuinely matters before the moment slips away. Emma, who had been unusually silent, suddenly exclaimed, "We're staying at this hotel too." Mom arranged for us to have a suite due to Ethan's chest issue. Which floor are you currently situated on? We are currently at 12. Her enthusiasm broke through the dense emotional haze like a ray of sunlight piercing through darkened skies. Emma, Kate cautioned softly, yet Marcus noticed the faint curve of her smile. Their daughter's knack for alleviating tension brought back memories of Kate in their early days, when she'd interrupt his stress-fueled work cycles with unexpected ideas for late-night ice cream outings. I'm actually on the top floor, Marcus said, observing the way Emma's eyes grew wide with surprise. The view of the city is truly remarkable. He paused for a moment before adding, would you care to take a look at it? Everyone here? The final segment was aimed at Kate, a gesture of reconciliation reaching across 7 years of quietude. Kate's inner turmoil was evident in her expression, the fierce guardian clashing with the one who had once placed her faith in him entirely. At last, she inquired, what are your plans for the press conference scheduled for tomorrow? I noticed the announcements. I canceled it, Marcus stated plainly. The twins may not grasp the weight of this statement, yet Kate certainly did. Marcus Reynolds was known for never canceling press conferences. Her astonishment was evident. Is that possible, Mom? Kindly? Emma was nearly bursting with excitement now. I'm curious to explore the aesthetics of a penthouse, and Ethan is ready to demonstrate his chess strategies. Is that correct? She gently prodded her brother, who had been silently taking in the whole interaction. Ethan gazed at Marcus, a flicker of cautious hope in his eyes. Have you ever played chess? The inquiry held a significance that transcended its seemingly straightforward phrasing. Marcus recalled the moments spent with his father, imparting the nuances of the game, a rare bright spot in a childhood largely filled with lessons about business. Marcus confessed that he used to play quite a lot, although he thinks he might be a bit out of practice now. I would be eager to discover some of your techniques. The grin that spread across Ethan's face shifted him from a focused academic to an enthusiastic child in a heartbeat. Kate glanced at her watch, a fidgety habit that Marcus recalled vividly. The hour is growing late, and you both have the robotics competition on the morrow? Her voice faded as she encountered two identical looks of dismay directed at her. The familiar expressions she had observed numerous times during client meetings when the opposing counsel brought their children to the office. The competition isn't until 11, Ethan noted with a sense of reason. Have we really already completed dinner? He cast a quick look at his sister, who responded with an eager nod. In that fleeting moment of unspoken connection, Marcus envisioned the potential of what he and Kate might have become, what they ought to have been, as partners in parenting. For just a moment, Kate agreed, her tone gentle. However, please allow us a moment. She led Marcus a short distance away, ensuring the twins couldn't overhear them. Questions are bound to arise. A multitude of them. They will seek answers that we may not be prepared to provide. Marcus acknowledged her words, grasping the caution they conveyed. I understand. However, Kate. He hesitated, selecting his phrases with precision. 7 years of questions have slipped by me. I want to begin tackling the questions I can, even if they pose a challenge. A subtle change flickered across Kate's face. Recognition of the man she had fallen for, perhaps, surfacing from behind the corporate mask. As they strolled toward the elevator, Emma unexpectedly intertwined her small hand with Marcus's. The unassuming act almost made his heart skip a beat. She gazed up at him with the intensity of Kate's eyes and inquired, did you truly create your entire company on your own? That's what the article Ethan came across indicated. He keeps it stored on his tablet, meticulously saving all things related to business. Ethan felt a warm rush at his sister's revelation but chose not to refute it. Instead, he retrieved the tablet from his backpack, swiftly accessing a folder titled Future Business Ideas. The scene constricted Marcus's throat. Unbeknownst to him, his son had been treading the same path all along. As Marcus opened the door, the penthouse suite exuded a different aura, reshaped by the arrival of his newfound family. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she approached the expansive windows, her hands eagerly pressing against the glass. Meanwhile, Ethan absorbed every detail with a careful and deliberate gaze. Kate lingered at the edge, arms crossed, a stance that Marcus recalled from board meetings when she was ready to voice her dissent. From this vantage point, the entire city unfolds before you, Emma exclaimed, her breath misting the glass. Mom, look, you can see our old apartment building from here. The words struck Marcus with the force of a physical blow. Their former apartment, he had purchased it post-divorce, unable to release the memories it contained. He was unaware that Kate and the twins resided nearby. Ethan had already taken his place at the chess table by the window, carefully arranging the pieces with deliberate and exacting motions. This is a truly exquisite set, he remarked, gently gliding his fingers across the intricately hand-carved marble pieces. The knights, however, deviate from the standard set by tournaments. It belonged to my father, Marcus clarified, stepping forward to join him. He showed me how to play on this set. The recollection of those infrequent tranquil moments spent with his father emerged. It was a rare moment when the exacting James Reynolds displayed patience instead of his usual critique. Kate observed them from close to the door, her face revealing a tangled web of feelings. Marcus locked eyes with her, a silent recognition of the significance of this moment passing between them. Their son occupied the same chess table where Marcus had devoted endless hours to devising business strategies. Yet this time, instead of corporate maneuvers, it would bear witness to a long-awaited father-son bond, 7 years in the making. Emma suddenly declared, still leaning against the window, "Mom says you work too much." She informed Aunt Sarah that this is the reason you were unaware of our existence. However, my friend Madison's father is also quite busy, yet he still makes it to her recitals. The pure observation bore the burden of countless unvoiced inquiries. Marcus sensed the tension radiating from Kate across the room. Yet before she could step in, he chose to speak his truth. Your mother had a point. I put in an excessive amount of effort. I believed I was creating something significant, yet I overlooked what was genuinely precious. He fixed his gaze on Kate as he pressed on. Some individuals grasp their lessons only when it's too late. I sincerely hope I'm not included in that group. Ethan completed the arrangement of the chess pieces, ensuring that each one was impeccably positioned. Do you want to play? He inquired softly. I can reveal the approach that led to victory in the championship. The olive branch was extended with a quiet grace that made Marcus pause, swallowing hard before he could find the words to reply. It would be a privilege, he remarked as he settled into the chair across from his son. Before anything else, I'm eager to learn more about the robotics competition happening tomorrow. Are you both in competition? The question pulled Emma away from the window, her enthusiasm unmistakable. We created a search and rescue robot, she exclaimed, plopping down onto the plush sofa next to Kate. Ethan handled the programming while I focused on designing the mechanical arms. It has the ability to ascend stairs and more. Her pride radiated, eliciting a smile even from Kate. They've been toiling away at it for months, Kate remarked gently. The contest is a component of MIT's Young Innovators Initiative. The pride in her voice resonated clearly, and Marcus experienced another wave of regret for all the moments he had overlooked. As Ethan delved into his opening chess strategy, Marcus caught sight of Emma retrieving an item from her backpack, a well-loved notebook adorned with intricate mechanical sketches. She noticed his gaze and clarified, "These are my innovative concepts. Mom claims my imaginative flair comes from you, while my knack for organization is inherited from her." A fleeting remark triggered a recollection, Kate meticulously sorting through his disordered business proposals during their inaugural year of marriage, transforming his imaginative ideas into tangible strategies. He had always claimed they formed the ideal partnership. Observing their children at this moment, he recognized the flawless combination of both parents, shaped and cherished even in his absence. "Father," Ethan's voice wavered, as if he were experimenting with the word for the very first time. "The next step is yours to take." The term father lingered in the atmosphere, transforming everything. Marcus locked eyes with Kate from across the room, perceiving in her gaze a mirror of his own inner chaos, fear, hope, and the tantalizing hint of possibility intertwined. If you're finding this video enjoyable and crave more content of this nature, Don't forget to click that subscribe button and activate the notification bell. In this manner, you'll ensure you don't overlook any of the incredible narratives we have on the horizon. Your encouragement truly aids in the channel's expansion and allows us to continue delivering the content you enjoy. Thanks a lot. The term father appeared to alter the ambience in the penthouse suite. Emma lifted her gaze from her notebook, observing her brother and father with keen interest as they engaged in their chess match. Kate approached the window, allowing the city lights to mask the tumult of emotions flickering across her face. Marcus gazed at the chess board, perceiving not merely the pieces, but the profound burden that a single word encompassed. Ethan whispered, indicating the trap he had meticulously crafted, "Checkmate in 3 moves, unless you perceive something I might be overlooking." The humility in his voice, reminiscent of Marcus's own early chess days, caused a tightening in his chest. His son had not only received his appearance but also his keen intellect, his meticulous evaluation of every potential outcome. "No, I see it now," Marcus confessed, examining the board with sincere appreciation. "That's absolutely fantastic, Ethan. You orchestrated that 6 moves ago, didn't you?" The boy's satisfied grin spoke volumes. From the couch, Emma let out a playful sigh, her eyes rolling in a light-hearted manner. She explained that he does that to everyone. Mom is the only one who occasionally spots his traps ahead of time. She claims it's due to the years she observed you orchestrating business deals in that manner. The offhand remark caused both Marcus and Kate to pause for a brief moment. Kate was the first to recover, shifting from the window to take a seat next to Emma. As the hours slipped away, she murmured gently, her tone lacking the urgency it once held. "It's essential for both of you to recharge before the competition tomorrow." However, Emma was already retrieving her tablet, excited to share her robot designs with Marcus. "Just 5 more minutes," she implored, her expression reminiscent of Kate's compelling courtroom demeanor, causing Marcus to stifle a grin. "I'd like to share my servo motor modifications with Dad." The term Dad slipped from her mouth effortlessly, as though it had been a part of her vocabulary forever. Kate's resolve clearly began to falter. She gazed at Marcus, a hint of vulnerability flickering across her expression. "They've never stayed up this late before a competition," she remarked, yet her tone suggested uncertainty rather than certainty. Marcus suggested with caution, "I could come tomorrow, to the contest, if that is acceptable." He maintained a calm demeanor, yet his heart raced with anticipation. "I'm eager to witness this robot in action." Ethan, having been silently rearranging the chess pieces, suddenly lifted his gaze with intensity. "Is that so? Would you be willing to come?" The optimism in his tone made Marcus understand the significance of his seemingly simple offer. "However, what about your organization? Mom mentioned that you have significant meetings each day." Marcus shifted away from the chess table, kneeling before his son. "Ethan, direct your gaze towards me." He lingered until those intense, shadowy eyes locked onto his. "Nothing, no gathering, no agreement, no organization holds greater significance than being present tomorrow. I have already missed far too much. I want to ensure I catch every detail. Do you truly promise?" Emma's voice chimed in, taking on a sudden gravity. Madison's dad frequently makes commitments to attend events, yet he often delegates the responsibility to his assistant instead. The pain in her voice, even for a friend, revealed a fear that Marcus had to confront. He shifted his focus to encompass her in his look.
Yes, sur you.
"And what about Emma?" He held his breath until her gaze met his. "I always keep my word. That's no longer the case." The final remark was aimed at Kate, who observed the interaction with shimmering eyes. "The competition begins at 11, Kate finally announced. "The Johnson Athletic Center at MIT. They will participate in the junior division." She took a moment before softly revealing, "Their team goes by the name Double Trouble Robotics." The mention elicited a grin from Marcus. It was an ideal fit for them. As Kate collected the twins' belongings, Marcus observed Ethan meticulously folding a sheet of paper and tucking it away in his pocket. "What is that?" he inquired softly. Ethan paused for a moment before drawing it back out. The article on Reynolds Corporation bore the marks of its history, creased from countless folds and unfolds. He confessed that he had it since last year. I enjoyed learning about your journey in transforming the company and enhancing its success. I had no idea you were, well, Yet, I envisioned a day when I might embark on a similar journey. The heartfelt confession, infused with genuine hope, struck Marcus with a profound realization. As he focused on crafting a corporate legacy, his son had been silently nurturing a desire to tread the same path. As the twins collected their belongings, Emma's tablet slipped from her grasp, crashing to the floor with a loud clatter. The display illuminated, showcasing a backdrop that left Marcus momentarily breathless. A youthful version of himself and Kate at their law school graduation, both radiating joy at the camera. Emma swiftly grabbed the tablet, yet the moment lingered in the atmosphere. She explained, a sudden shyness overtaking her, that she had found it online, while I was researching my father's business. Mom keeps a similar picture tucked away in her desk drawer at home. At times, I noticed her gaze lingering on it. Kate's quick gasp revealed the reality behind their daughter's statement. Marcus recalled that day vividly, both of them brimming with dreams and promises, before the weight of corporate ambition and forgotten anniversaries began to wear away at their foundation. With a burst of laughter, Kate captured the moment, pulling him in for a selfie. He spoke gently, his words carrying a deeper significance for Kate than for the twins, reflecting on their youth. Mom says that was when you were happiest, Ethan noted, his awareness slicing through the haze of nostalgia. Prior to the company's significant growth. He paused, then added with a sudden clarity, is that the reason you put in so many hours? To attempt to experience that joy once more? The question struck Marcus with the force of a tangible impact. Truly, wisdom often comes from the youngest among us. He noticed Kate shift to intervene, to shield him from their son's unintentional psychological acuity. Yet he raised a hand to stop her. It's fine, he said to her before shifting his attention to Ethan. At times, grown-ups seek joy in the least likely of spots. Achievement does not equate to joy. I came to understand that lesson far too late. Emma, feeling the weight of the atmosphere, instinctively took action to uplift the spirits. You've discovered us at last. And we're definitely more exciting than some dull, traditional business, right? Her radiant smile embodied Kate, thawing something icy within Marcus's heart. Indeed you are, he conceded, his voice thick with feeling. Both of you are. He gazed at Kate, recognizing the shared comprehension reflected in her eyes. Their offspring embodied the finest qualities of each parent, a living testament to the dreams they had once envisioned together. I have a meeting room reserved at MIT tomorrow morning, Kate announced unexpectedly, catching everyone off guard. The children will conduct final testing on their robots ahead of the competition. If that is your desire. Her voice faded, leaving the invitation suspended in the atmosphere. At what hour? Marcus was poised to grab his phone, prepared to rearrange his entire agenda if necessary. That might be a bit premature considering your timetable. I will be there, he interjected. I desire to experience it all, evaluating the competition, every aspect of it. He glanced at the twins, their eyes sparkling with barely contained excitement as they observed the unfolding exchange. Is that all right with you as well? Absolutely. Emma sprang lightly on her toes. Your assistance in calibrating the servo motors would be greatly appreciated. I came across information about your company's work in precision engineering, and I'm currently facing challenges with the calculations for arm rotation. Emma, Kate interjected softly, take a breath, darling. Yet, she wore a smile, a genuine one that illuminated her eyes. It was a look Marcus hadn't encountered in 7 years, and it struck him with a wave of nostalgia for what he had longed for. Ethan, always the pragmatic type, was already retrieving his competition notebook. This evening, we will demonstrate the fundamental functions of the robot, ensuring you grasp what you'll observe tomorrow. The system is quite intricate. He halted abruptly, filled with doubt. Unless you have too much on your plate? The inquiry resonated with the memories of every occasion when Marcus had prioritized everything else. Kate, family, and all else over his work. Yet that was the former Marcus. The individual in this penthouse suite, enveloped by the family he had only just discovered, was transformed. "I have all the time in the world," he said with conviction, settling down next to his son. As he performed the action, he locked eyes with Kate, noticing a blend of apprehension and optimism in her gaze. They faced a lengthy journey ahead, filled with years of pain to confront. Yet in this moment, witnessing the joy on Ethan's face as he unveiled his notebook and listening to Emma's enthusiastic discussion about servo motors, it felt like the dawn of something truly valuable. While the twins enthusiastically detailed their robot's features, Kate slipped into the penthouse's kitchen area, her keen observational instincts sharpening as she absorbed every detail around her. The vacant coffee cups, the neglected room service menu, the laptop encircled by contract papers, all stand as testament to Marcus's isolated existence. He observed her gaze and decided to pursue, while Emma and Ethan remained absorbed in their technical conversation. "You haven't changed," Kate said softly, picking up one of the coffee cups, continuing to push forward fueled by coffee and sheer willpower. Yet her words lacked any sharpness, merely offering a soft acknowledgement of well-known patterns. "Some things have shifted," Marcus responded, observing their children gather around Ethan's notebook. "Kate, I want you to understand, if I had any inkling?" He fell silent as she raised a hand. "I understand," she replied with a straightforward tone. "Your expression reveals it each time you gaze upon them. That's the Marcus I recall from our days in law school. The individual who valued more than merely the upcoming significant transaction." With a delicate touch, she placed the cup down. "However, it's important for you to grasp this as well." He paused, observing her as she collected her thoughts, familiar with the routine she followed before making her case from their days in the courtroom. "If you're going to be part of their lives, and I realize now that keeping you away would cause more harm than good, it must be a complete commitment. There will be no sending help to school events, no checking emails during family dinners, and no missing birthdays for board meetings. As I did with you," he acknowledged softly. The weight of their past errors lingered in the air, palpable and heavy. "They're already so much like you," Kate said, her voice heavy with feeling. "Ethan, possessing a keen strategic mind, and Emma, embodying an innovative spirit. I encounter you in them daily, and it fills me with dread as I recall how that remarkable intensity of yours morphed into fixation. They truly merit more than that." From the living room, Emma's voice soared with enthusiasm. "Hey Dad, check out this design modification I came up with." The term father still sparked a surge of emotion in both of them. Marcus locked eyes with Kate, allowing her to perceive the depth of his genuine intent. "I'm no longer the man who prioritized a merger over your father's funeral," he said softly. "Witnessing them this evening, realizing what I've overlooked, it has transformed everything. The organization, the agreements, the legacy I believed I was creating. This pales in significance to what truly matters." Kate observed him intently, her extensive legal training dissecting each nuance of his expression. "Show me," she finally said. "Not for me, but for them. Be present tomorrow. Stay engaged. Become the father they truly deserve." He assured me that he would be. Then, with a subtle smile, "I may require a bit of guidance. I find myself 7 years late to the parenting journey." Before Kate could reply, Ethan's voice cut in. "Mom?" Emma's attempting to reprogram the robot's base code. The well-known irritation of an older sibling, just 12 minutes apart, as Emma had gleefully declared earlier, brought a smile to both their faces. As they returned to the living room, Marcus caught sight of Kate wiping away a tear. The gesture brought back memories of a moment 7 years prior, when she had done the same while signing their divorce papers. Yet these tears carried a unique weight. Not a conclusion, but maybe an inception. "All right, you," Kate declared, her mother's voice resonating with authority. "The moment has truly arrived to depart. Tomorrow promises to be quite an eventful day." She raised a hand to silence their objections. "The robot will remain in place come morning, and your father will be present as well." She cast a fleeting look at Marcus. "Isn't that so?" He confirmed at 8 a.m. sharp. "I will take care of breakfast." The smile he received from all three of them filled his heart with warmth. After 7 long years, his penthouse transformed from a mere resting spot between meetings into a space that held the promise of becoming a true home. As they collected their belongings, Emma wrapped her arms around Marcus in a spontaneous embrace. "I'm so relieved we discovered you," she murmured, then quickly returned to Kate's side. Ethan extended a more subdued handshake, yet his eyes sparkled with the same joy as his sister's. As he stood in his doorway, observing them approach the elevator, Marcus came to the profound realization that his life had transformed completely within just a few hours. The press conference he had called off, the agreements he had delayed, all of it paled in comparison to the anticipation of the dawn that awaited him. If you're finding this video enjoyable and crave more content of this nature, don't forget to click that subscribe button and activate the notification bell. In that manner, you'll be sure to catch all the incredible tales we have in store. Your encouragement truly aids in the channel's expansion and allows us to continue delivering the content you enjoy. Thanks a lot. Once they departed, Marcus approached the window that Emma had occupied moments before, placing his hand against the cool glass. The city lights shimmered in a haze as he reflected on all the moments that had slipped away. First steps, first words, the initial days of school. Yet, beyond the significant milestones he had overlooked, it was the little details that he truly longed for. Morning chats, assistance with assignments, tales at night, the simple moments that forged connections between parent and child. His phone vibrated, yet another notification from the board regarding the cancellation of tomorrow's press conference. For the first time in his career, Marcus chose to leave it unanswered. Instead, he opened his calendar app and started removing meetings, freeing up his schedule for the upcoming days. The Empire was patient. He had greater priorities to construct now. On his desk, amidst the piles of contracts and merger documents, rested Ethan's chess medal. It was left behind by his son, thoughtfully positioned beside the marble chess set. He had said it with that serious smile, "So you can bring it tomorrow." A seemingly modest act, yet it bore the profound significance of trust, hope, and potential. Marcus grasped the medal, recalling the pride with which Ethan had displayed it. His son, a chess champion with a penchant for exploring business practices in his leisure time. His daughter, a brilliant mind in engineering, always carried his photo on her tablet. They had blossomed into remarkable individuals in his absence, all due to Kate's steadfast commitment and resilience. He pondered Kate's words in the kitchen. She worried that his drive could harm the twins just as it had harmed her. Her caution was justified. She had every reason to safeguard them. Yet, she was justified in offering him this opportunity, this glimmer of hope for atonement. Approaching his desk, Marcus powered up his laptop. Rather than reviewing market reports or acquisition proposals, he started to type, "Dear Board of Directors, I am writing to inform you of some important changes." The words came effortlessly as he detailed his choice to withdraw from daily tasks, to assign greater responsibilities, to focus on what was genuinely important. Upon completing the email, Marcus caught sight of his reflection in the window. The silver strands in his hair remained unchanged, the familiar stress lines etched around his eyes still present, yet there was an unmistakable shift in his demeanor. The burden of relentless aspiration, of never quite achieving a sense of success, had been released. In its stead was something more uplifting, radiant, filled with promise. Tomorrow morning, he would gather with his children for some exciting robot testing. He would observe their contests, celebrate their successes, embody the father figure they truly needed. Perhaps, in time, he and Kate might discover a path to mend past hurts, to create something fresh from the remnants of their former lives. Success, Marcus came to understand, transcended merger deals and stock prices. It wasn't discovered in luxurious penthouse suites or during press conferences. Genuine achievement resided in Emma's heartfelt embrace, in Ethan's thoughtful chess strategies, in Kate's openness to offer him another opportunity. It was in the quiet instances, the exchanged glances, the hope for what lay ahead. The evening deepened, yet Marcus lingered at the window, observing the bustling city beneath him. Out in the world, his children were likely preparing for sleep, filled with anticipation for the competition that awaited them the next day. His family. The term resonated with an intriguing blend of unfamiliarity and undeniable correctness. After 7 years of crafting an empire of wealth, he unearthed a different kind of richness in just one evening. The kind that transcended monetary value, existing instead in the invaluable realms of love, trust, and the grace of second chances. Tomorrow marks a fresh start, not only for him but for everyone involved. Ultimately, the most significant accomplishments in life are not those that capture the spotlight or drive market values up. It's in those instances we prioritize love instead of ambition, family rather than wealth, and find the bravery to acknowledge our errors before the opportunity slips away. At times, the most significant agreement we forge is the one we establish with our own emotions. If this story has resonated with you and you wish to show your support for the channel, please think about using the Super Thanks button below. Your support enables us to craft more impactful narratives and ensures that these stories continue to flow. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share this video with anyone who could benefit from this important reminder about what really counts in life. United, we can share more narratives that resonate deeply and transform lives. We appreciate your presence on this journey with us.
The city was drowning in darkness, rain pouring down relentlessly, each droplet shimmering under the dim glow of flickering streetlights. The narrow alleys twisted like a labyrinth, filled with shadows that swallowed the lost and the damned. Leonardo Leo Moretti ran through the rain-soaked streets, one hand pressed against his side where a bullet had torn through flesh. Blood seeped into his black coat, but he had no time to stop. Behind him, footsteps echoed. His pursuers were close. "Hit me that way," a voice barked through the storm. Leo gritted his teeth, forcing himself forward despite the searing pain. He had survived worse. He had built his empire from blood and fire, but tonight, the hunter had become the hunted. As he turned sharply into a narrow alley, his vision blurred. His strength was draining fast. He needed to disappear, to find shelter, or he would not make it through the night. Then, Through the haze of rain and agony, neon lights flickered in the distance. St. Clair Medical Center, a hospital, the last place someone like him should step into. But he had no choice. Leo staggered forward, each step heavier than the last. Just as his knees buckled, a figure emerged from the hospital's back entrance. Dr. Isabel Hayes had just finished a grueling shift, stepping outside to clear her mind. The cold air bit into her skin, but exhaustion clung heavier than the night itself. Then she saw him, a man, collapsed near the hospital gates, drenched in blood and rain, and he wasn't moving. Isabel's instincts took over in an instant. She rushed forward, her hands trembling slightly as she checked for signs of life. His pulse, weak but still there, his breathing, shallow, uneven. And then, as she pressed her hand against his soaked shirt, she felt it. Warm, sticky blood, seeping through fabric. A gunshot wound. "We need a stretcher, now!" she shouted toward the hospital entrance. Nurses scrambled as they rushed to assist her, lifting the unconscious man onto the stretcher. But even in his semi-conscious state, his body reacted on pure instinct. His hand shot up, grasping her wrist with surprising strength. Isabel froze. His grip was firm, rough, yet warm. Even in the depths of unconsciousness, he clung onto something. Onto her. By the time they wheeled him into the emergency room, his grip finally loosened, his body surrendering to the darkness. Under the harsh glare of surgical lights, Isabel cut through the blood-soaked fabric of his shirt, and what she saw made her breath hitch. Scars. Countless scars. They crisscrossed his body, old wounds layered over new ones, each one a silent testament to a past carved in violence. These weren't the marks of an ordinary man. This was a man who had fought wars, perhaps not on battlefields, but in the shadows. Heart rate is stable, but he's lost a dangerous amount of blood, a nurse reported. "Prepare for a transfusion," Isabel ordered, her voice steady despite the unease settling in her chest. The surgery stretched on for over 2 hours, every second critical. But finally, the last bullet fragment was removed. He had survived. But as Isabel stitched his wounds, a question burned at the back of her mind. Who was this man? And what kind of life had led him here, to the brink of death, in a place where he clearly did not belong? The first thing Leo noticed when he woke up was the blinding white light above him. His entire body ached, pain radiating from his side, but his mind remained sharp. Years of surviving in the underworld had trained him to wake up alert, ready. Then he saw her. A woman stood at the foot of his hospital bed, arms crossed, observing him with an unreadable expression. She didn't flinch, didn't look afraid, just calm. "You're awake," she stated. Leo's gaze flickered over her. Dark hair neatly tied back, piercing green eyes, a professional stance. A doctor. "You saved me," he rasped, his voice hoarse from dehydration. "I was just doing my job," she replied coolly. Leo smirked, a slow, knowing curve of his lips. Interesting. For the next few days, Isabel checked on him regularly, treating his wounds with detached efficiency. Or at least, that's what she told herself. But some days, she found herself lingering just a little longer than necessary, watching the way his sharp blue eyes followed her every movement. She ignored the way her pulse quickened when he smirked at her, the way her stomach twisted in something suspiciously close to anticipation when she walked into his room. She didn't pry. She didn't show fear, and that annoyed him. Leo Moretti was used to two types of people, those who feared him and those who wanted something from him. Isabel Hayes, she was neither. "You don't seem afraid of me," he remarked one afternoon as she changed his bandages. "Should I be?" she shot back without missing a beat. Leo chuckled. This woman intrigued him more than she should, and so the game began. The moment he was discharged, Leo made it his personal mission to unsettle Isabel Hayes. It started with small things, showing up at the hospital for the most ridiculous reasons. "Dr. Hayes, I think my stitches need checking." "You were discharged yesterday," she deadpanned. "What can I say? I miss your company," he smirked. Then came the flowers. Dozens of red roses delivered to the hospital every morning. "I don't want them," Isabel told the receptionist, handing the bouquet back. Day 2, another bouquet. Day 3, 2 bouquets. Day 4, a handwritten note attached. "The flowers aren't as beautiful as you, but they'll have to do for now. L.M." Isabel sighed. This was going to be a problem. By the end of the week, Isabel was exhausted. Long shifts, back-to-back surgeries, and Leo Moretti's relentless persistence were taking a toll on her. She barely had time to breathe, let alone deal with his antics. But today was different. From the moment she woke up, her body felt heavy. A dull headache throbbed at her temples, her limbs weak. But Isabel wasn't the kind of person who let exhaustion slow her down. She had patients to care for. So she popped a fever reducer, pushed through her morning routine, and ignored the way her vision blurred every now and then. By afternoon, she was struggling. Her hands trembled slightly as she prepared for surgery. Cold sweat formed at her brow, but she gritted her teeth. "Just a little more," she told herself. But as she stepped out of the operating room, her balance wavered, and someone caught her before she could fall. A firm grip. Familiar. Too familiar. "You're sick," Leo's deep voice rumbled near her ear. Isabel blinked, trying to focus. Why was he here? "I'm fine," she muttered, trying to pull away. Leo didn't let go. His grip was strong, steady. "No, you're not," he said, frustration lacing his tone. Before she could protest, he scooped her up effortlessly, ignoring the startled gasps from the nurses around them. "Leo, put me down," she snapped. "You have 2 options, Doc," he smirked. "Walk to your car, or I carry you out." She glared at him. The bastard was enjoying this. But she was too weak to fight, so for the first time in forever, Isabel let someone take care of her. Leo Moretti never stayed in one place too long. His world thrived on movement, always looking over his shoulder, always staying one step ahead of the people who wanted him dead. But here he was, sitting in Isabel Hayes' apartment, watching over her like a damn bodyguard. She had fallen asleep almost immediately, the fever finally pulling her under. Leo had planned to leave once she was settled, but somehow he stayed. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel the urge to run. But peace never lasted long in his world. His phone vibrated, an unknown number. Leo's jaw clenched as he read the message. "The doctor seems important to you, Moretti. Should we pay her a visit?" A cold rage settled deep in his chest. They had found her. His grip tightened around the phone, his other hand unconsciously balling into a fist. This was exactly why he never let people get close. Because the moment they did, they became targets. Leo stood abruptly, running a hand through his hair. He had 2 choices. Take Isabel and disappear, but that would mean dragging her into his world, or cut ties, walk away, keep her safe. His fingers curled around his phone, knuckles turning white. He already knew the answer. By morning, Isabel was feeling better. The fever had broken, and though she was still weak, she noticed something was different. Leo was quiet, distant. She frowned. Where was the teasing? The usual smug remarks? "You're leaving, aren't you?" she asked, her voice sharp. Leo exhaled, leaning against the doorway. "I shouldn't have stayed this long." Something in her chest tightened. Isabel crossed her arms, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "Then go," she snapped, but this time her voice lacked its usual sharpness. For a split second, something flickered in Leo's eyes. Hesitation. Regret. It made her stomach clench, made something inside her scream at her to stop him. But she didn't, because she wasn't sure what she wanted more, to push him away or to beg him to stay. Leo's jaw tensed. He had expected anger, but he didn't expect hurt. Her green eyes darkened, not with fury, but with something far worse. Betrayal. A silent plea, unspoken but deafening. He could feel the weight of it pressing down on him, suffocating, making it harder to walk away. His fingers twitched at his side, resisting the urge to reach for her one last time. Just one more touch, one more moment. but that was a luxury he couldn't afford. So, he turned. And with every step he took away from her, it felt like he was bleeding all over again. Swallowing the bitter taste in his mouth, Leo forced himself to turn away. Each step felt like walking through fire. And when the door finally closed behind him, he realized this was the first time in his life that he had truly lost. And for the first time in his life, leaving felt like a mistake. 3 months. That was how long it had been since Leo Moretti vanished from Isabel Hayes' life. She told herself she didn't care, that he was just a temporary disturbance. But then why did the hospital feel emptier without him? Why did she find herself glancing at the hallway, half expecting to see him walk in with that infuriating smirk? Why, when she finally allowed herself a moment of stillness at night, did her mind always wander back to him? But every time she walked past the hospital entrance, every time a stranger with dark hair and sharp eyes entered the ER, her heart betrayed her. Then, one night, everything changed. The emergency doors burst open with force, shouts filling the air. "We need a doctor, now!" A group of men dressed in black stormed into the hospital, carrying a blood-soaked figure on a stretcher. Isabel's breath caught. No, this wasn't real. But the blood staining the hospital floor was real. The limp body on the stretcher was real. The way her knees nearly buckled was real. Her fingers curled into fists, nails digging into her palms. Leo? The name tore from her lips like a scream, raw and broken, before she was running, shoving past nurses, ignoring the pounding in her chest. She had spent 3 months trying to forget him, and now she was about to lose him all over again. His face was pale, his body still, blood soaking through his once white shirt, turning it deep crimson. There was so much blood. "Gunshot wound, critical condition," one of the men barked. Isabel barely heard him. The hospital lights blurred, her chest tightening. "This isn't real. This can't be real." "Dr. Hayes, we need you." Her hands trembled. She couldn't do this. Then suddenly, a weak grip. Leo's fingers barely curled around her wrist. It was faint, but it was there. His eyelids fluttered open, his blue eyes hazy with pain, and then, through cracked lips, he uttered the words that shattered her heart. "I always loved you." And then his hand slipped away. The beeping monitors turned erratic, his body went limp. "We're losing him." Isabel snapped back to reality. No. She refused to let this be the end. "Prep the OR, now," she shouted, her voice shaking. As Leo was rushed into surgery, Isabel followed, her heart pounding violently against her ribs. This time, she wouldn't let him go. This time, she would fight for him. The operating room was silent, except for the steady beeping of machines and the tense whispers of the surgical team. Isabel stood over Leo's unconscious body, her gloved hands stained with his blood. "Scalpel," she ordered, her voice firm despite the tremor in her chest. Every cut she made, every movement, was personal. She wasn't just saving a patient, she was saving the man who had left her, the man who had broken her heart, but the man she still couldn't let go. The bullet was deep, dangerously close to his heart. "Come on, Leo," she murmured under her breath. "Don't do this to me." Minutes stretched into hours, but finally, the last bullet fragment was removed. "Heart rate stabilizing," a nurse reported. Isabel exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. He had survived the surgery, but now it was up to him. Days passed. Leo remained unconscious. Isabel never left his side. She told herself it was just duty, that she was only doing what any doctor would. But the truth was she was terrified. Terrified that he might never wake up. One night she sat beside his bed, exhaustion weighing on her. She took his hand in hers, gripping it tightly. "Leo, you don't even know that I love you," she whispered. And then, his fingers twitched. Isabel froze. For a moment, she thought she had imagined it. Her breath caught in her throat, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. Then, a weak whisper followed. "Isabel?" Her entire body trembled. She had spent nights sitting beside him, whispering his name, begging him to come back. And now, he finally did. Leo's eyelids fluttered open, his gaze unfocused at first. Then, his vision cleared, and the first thing he saw was her. Isabel sat by his bedside, gripping his hand as if she had been holding on for dear life. "You're still here?" His voice was weak, but his eyes held something deeper. Relief. A shaky laugh escaped her lips, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Did you really think I'd let you die, you idiot?" Leo tried to smirk, but the pain made him wince. That was the moment he knew. He wasn't just fighting for his life. He was fighting for her. Days turned into weeks. Leo slowly regained his strength. Isabel never once left him. One evening, as he sat by the hospital window, staring at the city he had once ruled, he made a decision. "I'm leaving it all behind," he said quietly. Isabel turned to him, brows furrowed. "What?" "The mafia, the power, everything." He met her gaze, unwavering. "I don't need it anymore. I just need you." She studied him carefully, searching for any trace of doubt. But Leo Moretti had never been more certain of anything in his life. "Are you sure?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. A slow smile spread across his lips. "As long as you're with me, I'll do anything." And for the first time in a long time, Leo Moretti was finally free. Months passed. The once feared Leo Moretti was no longer a name whispered in the underworld. Instead, he was just Leo, a man rebuilding his life in a quiet coastal town with the woman who had saved him in more ways than one. Isabel continued her work as a doctor, opening a small clinic for the community. And Leo? He found purpose in helping street kids. Children who reminded him too much of his own past. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they sat together on the beach, the waves rolling in lazily. Leo reached into his pocket, his fingers brushing against the small silver ring. It wasn't extravagant, it wasn't flashy, but it was meaningful. Taking a deep breath, he turned to Isabel. "I lost you once," he said, voice deep and steady. She looked at him, her soft smile illuminated by the golden light of dusk. "But in the end, you still came back." Leo exhaled a quiet chuckle. "This time, I want to make sure I never lose you again." Then, he dropped to one knee. Isabel's breath hitched. "I have nothing left," he murmured, voice rough with emotion. "No empire, no riches, no name worth remembering. Just me. Just a man who has spent his entire life in the dark, only to realize that you were the only light he ever needed." He exhaled shakily, eyes locking onto hers. "Marry me, Isabel. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that I was always meant to be yours." A tear slipped down her cheek, but this time it wasn't from pain. "Leo Moretti," she whispered, "I've been waiting for this question for a long time." She held out her hand, letting him slide the ring onto her finger. "My answer is yes." Their wedding wasn't extravagant. There were no luxury venues, no high-profile guests, just the people who truly mattered. The street kids Leo had helped, the patients Isabel had cared for, their closest friends. Isabel wore a simple white dress, her smile more radiant than any diamond, and Leo, in a beige suit, looked at her like she was the only thing that had ever mattered. "Are you sure about this?" Leo murmured as they stood before the priest. Isabel laughed, squeezing his hand. "Do you still not believe that I love you?" He leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "I just wanted to hear you say it again." She met his gaze, unwavering. "Leo Moretti, I love you." And with that, the man who had once lived in the shadows finally found his forever. Not in power, not in fear, but in the steady rhythm of her heartbeat against his. And for the first time in his life, Leo Moretti was home. The Whitmore estate, with its towering marble columns and grand chandeliers, buzzed with activity. Staff hurried about, arranging every detail for the wedding scheduled to take place the next day, an event expected to be flawless in every way. But for Lyra Whitmore, it felt more like the sealing of her fate than a celebration. Standing in her bedroom, Lyra gazed absently out the window at the sprawling gardens below. Her family had spent decades building their vast fortune, but now it all teetered on the edge of collapse. Victor Langston, her fiancé, had been described by her father, Charles Whitmore, as the only chance to save the family's name and fortune. "We have no other choice," Charles had told her, his eyes heavy with worry but firm in resolve. "Victor is the only one willing to help us." Lyra had never felt at ease around Victor. In every meeting, his cold, calculating gaze sent chills down her spine. While he always appeared polite and charming in front of her family, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong with him. She clutched the silver necklace around her neck, the last gift from her mother before she passed away. "What would you do, Mom?" Lyra whispered to herself. But her mother wasn't there to answer. The commotion in the hallway snapped her back to reality. This wasn't her wedding. It was a transaction, a chess move she wanted no part of. Lyra knew that if she didn't act now, she would be trapped forever. The pre-wedding dinner was held in the grand hall of the Whitmore estate, where crystal chandeliers cast shimmering light across gilded walls. Guests chatted animatedly, laughter echoing throughout the room, but Lyra sat quietly in a corner, her hand gripping a glass of wine. Victor Langston stood at the center of the room, engaging a group of business associates. His perfectly tailored suit and charming smile masked the coldness that Lyra could sense in every one of his movements. To everyone else, Victor was the epitome of success, power, and generosity. But Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that he was playing a carefully constructed role. She hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but a low, measured tone in Victor's voice caught her attention. "The next girl needs to be transferred by the weekend," Victor said, his voice quiet but clear enough for Lyra to hear. She froze. The next girl? What was he talking about? A wave of unease washed over her, but she didn't dare ask. Her family relied too heavily on Victor, and any suspicion on her part could complicate an already fragile situation. The next morning, Lyra entered Victor's study to retrieve a few documents for the wedding preparations. While pulling open a drawer to find a pen, her eyes landed on a thick file tucked inside. She hesitated, but curiosity got the better of her. Inside the file was a photograph of a young girl, a face Lyra didn't recognize. Below the photo were strange notes, a name, a date, and a chilling line that read, "Transfer completed." Lyra's heart stopped. The photo, combined with what she had overheard the night before, began to piece together a terrifying story. Victor wasn't just a powerful businessman. He was hiding something much darker. Closing the drawer quickly, Lyra glanced around to ensure no one had seen her. She slipped the file into her bag, knowing she had just uncovered something that could change everything. That night, she stared at the file on her bed, a determined resolve forming in her mind. She didn't know where she would go, but one thing was certain. She had to leave, and she would not let Victor control her life. The faint glow of garden lights cast long shadows across the stone pathways of the Whitmore estate. Lyra moved cautiously, her small bag containing the file she had taken from Victor's study, evidence she didn't fully understand but knew was critical to her escape. As she neared the back gate, Lyra instinctively glanced around, listening for any sound. But just as she took another step forward, a deep voice called out from behind her. "What are you doing here?" Lyra turned to see a tall man in a security uniform. Her heart pounded as she stammered, "I was just taking a walk." The man raised an eyebrow, suspicion flickering in his eyes. "At this hour? You're Lyra Whitmore, aren't you? Victor Langston's fiancée?" Lyra didn't answer immediately, but the tension in her expression betrayed her. The man took a step closer, his tone turning firm. "You're trying to run, aren't you?" Before he could react further, Lyra acted on impulse. She grabbed his collar, pulled him down, and kissed him. The man froze, his eyes widening in shock, but before he could say a word, Lyra whispered urgently, "Don't shout. Please, I need to get out of here." He stared at her for a moment, silent. Then the sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, accompanied by another guard's voice. "Is someone there?" Lyra glanced nervously toward the approaching lights. The man in front of her finally spoke, but instead of shouting, he said, "Get down. Follow me." Hesitating only briefly, Lyra obeyed, trailing closely as he led her through a narrow passage behind the estate's fence. When they stopped in a secluded spot, the man turned to her, his voice low but firm. "My name is Theo Mercer. I'm not a guard. I'm here to investigate Victor Langston." Lyra stared at him in disbelief. "Investigate? Who are you?" Theo glanced at the bag she clutched tightly, his sharp eyes narrowing. "The file in your bag. I need it. But first, we need to get out of here." "How do I know you're not lying?" Lyra asked, her voice filled with doubt. Theo shrugged. "You can trust me, or go back and let Victor find you. Your choice." Lyra's mind raced. While she wasn't sure she could trust Theo, one thing was clear: going back was not an option. "Fine, but you have to tell me everything." "Once we're safe," Theo replied, pulling her to her feet. "Let's move." He guided her through a hidden path known only to him, leading to a waiting car. As they drove off, Lyra glanced back at the Whitmore estate one last time before it disappeared into the darkness. She knew this was the beginning of a dangerous journey, but it was also her only chance to reclaim her life. The next morning, as sunlight streamed into the Whitmore estate, an unusual tension filled the air. Lyra's room was empty, the bed untouched, and no one had seen her since the previous night. Victor Langston stood in his office, his piercing gaze fixed on the head of security. "She's gone?" Victor asked, his voice low but laced with menace. "Yes, sir, she's not in her room. One of the guards spotted her in the garden last night, but after that, no one knows where she went," the head of security replied, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. Victor clenched his fists, his eyes blazing with fury. He knew Lyra hadn't just run away. The file from his drawer was also missing. "She took something from me," Victor muttered, then turned to issue his orders. "Bind her. Use every resource we have. I don't care where she is, but she must be brought back." In the car, speeding away from the estate, Lyra sat quietly, her hands clutching the bag tightly. Theo sat beside her, his eyes focused on the road ahead. "How long do you think it will take them to realize I'm gone?" Lyra asked, her voice still trembling from the escape. "He may have already found out," Theo said, his tone calm but firm. "Victor isn't the type to let things go. He'll mobilize everyone to find you." Lyra took a deep breath, looking out the window. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know who I am." Theo glanced at her briefly before replying. "I don't know you, but I know Victor. He's ruined too many lives, including my sister's. If you have something that can take him down, it's worth the risk." Back at the estate, Victor received an update from his security network. A camera at the side gate had captured footage of a car leaving around the time Lyra disappeared. Using the license plate, he quickly identified the car's owner, Theo Mercer. Victor smirked, but the smile was filled with malice. "So she has an accomplice," he said. "Theo Mercer? Let's see what game you're playing." He ordered his team to track the car while leveraging his connections to block any potential routes Lyra and Theo might use. As Theo's car reached the outskirts of the city, his phone buzzed with a message. A contact in his network had warned him that Victor had discovered their escape. "We have a problem," Theo said, his voice grave. "They know it's me. We need to change plans immediately." "Where do we go now?" Lyra asked, her worry evident. Theo turned the wheel sharply, heading down a narrow dirt road leading into a forested area. "I know a safe place, but we have to get there before they catch up." Lyra nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew this escape was just beginning, and Victor wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted. The car rolled down desolate roads, heading toward a remote area far from the city. Lyra stared out the window, feeling a sense of relief slowly replace the tension as the city lights faded into the distance. "Where are we going?" she finally asked, breaking the silence. "To a safe place," Theo replied, his hands steady on the wheel. "I have a base where Victor can't reach us." Over an hour later, the car stopped in front of what looked like an ordinary warehouse, nestled in a quiet forest. Theo stepped out and gestured for Lyra to follow. "You'll understand once we're inside." Inside the warehouse was a hidden door leading down to an underground bunker, equipped with advanced technology. Large screens displayed maps, data, and surveillance photos of Victor at past events. "This is where I've been investigating Victor," Theo explained, handing Lyra a glass of water. "I've been tracking him for years, but I've never had enough evidence to take him down." Lyra sat down, her eyes glued to the screens. "Why are you targeting Victor? Who are you really?" Theo took a seat across from her, his gaze filled with a mix of anger and pain. "My name is Theo Mercer. I'm not a security guard or a detective. I'm the heir to Mercer Holdings, one of the largest financial conglomerates." Lyra blinked in surprise. "Billionaire Theo Mercer?" Theo nodded. "Yes, but that doesn't matter. What matters is finding my sister, Sophia." He paused, as if the weight of his emotions was almost too much to bear. "Sophia was Victor's ex-girlfriend," Theo continued. "They met when she was in college. I didn't interfere even though something about him felt off, but everything changed after a trip Victor invited her on." Lyra listened intently, a sense of dread creeping over her as she watched Theo's expression. "Sophia never came back from that trip," Theo said, his voice steady but tinged with pain. "Victor claims she decided to stay abroad and start a new life, but I know my sister. She would never do that without telling me." "Do you have any proof?" Lyra asked. Theo shook his head, frustration evident on his face. "Not enough. Victor is meticulous. I've searched for every trace, but he's erased it all." Lyra glanced at the file in her bag. "Maybe this can help." Theo nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. If that file contains anything tied to Victor, it could be the key to finding Sophia and bringing him down. But first, we need to make sure Victor doesn't find this place. Lyra looked at the screens, her heart heavy. She realized she wasn't just fighting for her freedom, but also helping Theo seek justice for his sister. Inside the secret base, the silence was broken only by the clicking of keys as Theo worked on his computer. Lyra sat beside him, the file open on the table in front of her. Her hands clenched tightly while her eyes remained fixed on the large screen displaying data about Victor. "We can't just hand this over to the police," Lyra said, her voice a mix of anxiety and determination. "Victor has too many connections. If we don't approach this the right way, he'll erase all the evidence and keep going like nothing happened." Theo nodded, his expression serious. "Exactly. He has allies in every sector, politicians, businessmen. We need to make this public, in front of everyone. If public opinion turns against him, no one can protect him." Lyra frowned. "But how? He won't let us get close that easily." Theo turned his monitor toward her, displaying an email invitation to an upcoming charity gala hosted by Victor. "Victor is holding a charity gala next week. It's the perfect opportunity to expose him in front of his supporters." Lyra stared at the email, determination flashing in her eyes. "So, what's the plan?" Leaning forward, Theo's voice was low but confident. "First, we need to access his network and back up all the data. If Victor finds out, he'll try to wipe everything, so we have to move fast." Lyra nodded. "And then, we make it public at the gala." "Exactly," Theo said. "But it can't just be raw data. We need it to be shocking enough that no one can ignore it. Photos, transactions, and, if possible, evidence of the girls he's trafficked." Lyra bit her lip, her gaze thoughtful. "But how do we get into the gala without being caught at the door?" Theo opened a drawer nearby and pulled out a set of identity-forgiving tools. "I have a way to get you in. You'll pose as a representative of a human rights organization. That will give you a legitimate reason to attend without drawing suspicion." "And what about you?" Lyra asked. "I'll be working from behind the scenes, controlling the security systems and ensuring the data goes live at the right moment," Theo replied, his voice steady. Lyra exhaled, feeling a mix of tension and resolve. "All right, but if the plan fails—" "If it fails, I'll make sure you're safe," Theo interrupted, his eyes unwavering. "I won't let Victor get to you." Lyra looked at him, sensing the sincerity in his words. "We can't fail," she said, her voice firm. The two of them worked late into the night, refining every detail of their plan. They knew that one mistake could unravel everything, but they also knew this was their only chance to take Victor down. Victor Langston's charity gala was held at the city's most luxurious hotel, with dazzling crystal chandeliers and elegantly decorated tables. The guests, powerful business leaders, journalists, and politicians gathered, eagerly awaiting Victor's much-anticipated announcement about a groundbreaking global initiative. Victor stepped onto the stage, his tailored suit impeccable and his smile exuding confidence. Despite his ongoing efforts to track down Lyra and Theo, he believed this gala would solidify his reputation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victor began, his voice echoing through the microphone, "I am honored to unveil an initiative that will change the future forever." But before he could continue, the lights in the room dimmed and the massive screen behind him abruptly switched. A series of images appeared, lists of young women, their photos, and financial transactions tied to a trafficking network. Victor turned to the screen, his face frozen in shock. Murmurs rippled through the room as guests seated near the screen leaned forward, examining the damning evidence. The grand doors of the ballroom swung open, and Lyra entered, followed by Theo. Lyra wore a pristine white suit, her expression calm, but her eyes burning with determination. "Victor Langston," Lyra called out, her voice clear and commanding, "did you think you could hide forever? These images are undeniable proof of the trafficking network you've been running." Victor tried to laugh, but it came out strained. "These are fabricated. Don't believe her. This is a scheme to destroy my reputation." Before he could continue, Theo stepped forward, holding up a USB drive. "This contains all the data from Victor's system, financial transactions, emails, and even video evidence. Anyone here can verify it for themselves." At that moment, a team of FBI agents entered the room, led by a stern-looking woman. "Victor Langston," she announced, "you are under arrest for human trafficking, money laundering, and human rights violations." Victor struggled and protested, but there was nothing he could do. The guests stared at him with disgust, their earlier admiration replaced by silent condemnation. Cameras flashed as journalists captured the moment he was handcuffed, while influential attendees quietly slipped away, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. Lyra stepped onto the stage, addressing the crowd. "Today, I didn't just reclaim my freedom," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I reclaimed it for every victim who has suffered at the hands of Victor Langston. Justice has been served." Applause broke out, not in celebration, but in acknowledgement that the truth had finally prevailed. 1 year later, Lyra's life had transformed completely. She stood in a brightly lit auditorium, delivering a speech at a human rights conference. Applause echoed through the room as she shared her story, from escaping Victor Langston to her journey of standing up for victims harmed by him. Theo sat in the front row, pride shining in his eyes. Although the search for his sister Sophia was still ongoing, he hadn't given up hope. With the evidence Lyra had provided and the FBI's support, many victims had been rescued, and Victor's network had been completely dismantled. After the conference, Lyra and Theo strolled through a nearby park. "Have you found anything about Sophia?" Lyra asked, her voice soft but full of empathy. Theo smiled, though it carried a hint of sorrow. "Not yet, but I know I won't stop until I do." Valera took his hand, her gaze steady. "We'll find her together." Under the gentle glow of the setting sun, they walked side by side, not just as survivors, but as partners, ready to build a better future. Over the past year, Theo had remained by Lyra's side. Together, they rebuilt their lives, supported victims affected by Victor's crimes, and hosted conferences to raise awareness about human trafficking. From the intense days of work to peaceful moments of quiet, their bond grew naturally over time. One afternoon, Theo took Lyra to a small hill outside the city, where the view of the sunset stretched across the horizon. The golden light bathed the landscape, creating an atmosphere of quiet romance. "Do you remember this place?" Theo asked gently. Lyra nodded, smiling softly. "This is where you first told me about Sophia. I'll never forget." Theo took a deep breath, his eyes filled with sincerity. "Lyra, over the past year, you haven't just given me hope of finding Sophia, but you've also shown me that I can start over. You've been the light in my darkness." To Lyra's surprise, Theo knelt down and pulled out a small box, revealing a sparkling diamond ring. "Lyra Whitmore, will you build a future with me? not just to overcome the past, but to create a life full of meaning and happiness. Will you marry me? Lyra gasped, her eyes welling up with tears of joy. She smiled brightly and nodded. Yes, I will. The wedding was held in a quiet garden, bathed in sunlight and adorned with white flowers. Family, friends, and those they had helped came together to witness this joyous occasion. Lyra wore an elegant wedding gown, adorned with delicate details. Theo stood under a flower-covered arch, his eyes shining with happiness. As Lyra walked toward Theo, their eyes met, and no words were needed. Their gazes said it all: love, trust, and a promise of a bright future. I promise to always stand by your side, Theo said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. And I promise the same, Lyra replied, her smile radiant. Under the watchful eyes of their loved ones, they exchanged rings and began a new chapter of their lives, one filled with hope and love. Late afternoons in Savannah often carried a quiet melancholy, as if the city itself grew weary after a long day. Spanish moss hung low from ancient oak trees lining the damp cobblestone streets, and purple bougainvillea swayed gently in the breeze. On the tin roof of a small bakery named Sweet Magnolia, the rain tapped a soft, rhythmic lullaby, like a gentle reminder that something was coming to an end. Emma Reyes, 25, stood behind the counter, her flour-dusted hands frozen in place, eyes resting on the fogged-up window pane. It was hard to believe that this space, this kitchen, this scent of vanilla and cinnamon would soon cease to exist. Her mother's bakery had endured for nearly 20 years, but today marked the end of its struggle for survival. In her hand was a lone rejection letter. The third and the final. Below the sterile corporate signature lay a sentence, as brutal as a verdict. The building had been sold to a real estate developer. A boutique hotel would rise from its bones, and she, the daughter who gave up college, parties, and dreams to preserve her mother's legacy, would have no place left to belong. From the oven came the scent of what might be her last batch of cinnamon rolls. The familiar sweetness no longer comforted her. It stung, like a farewell whispered in sugar and spice. Outside, Savannah was drowning quietly in the rain, and inside, a heart was clinging to the last fragile threads of memory, unwilling to let go. The wooden door creaked softly as the wind chimes above it sang their usual song, pulling Emma out of her heavy thoughts. She looked up, and for a moment, the entire room seemed to pause. A man stepped inside, tall, broad-shouldered, his dark brown hair damp from the rain, and his black overcoat tailored so perfectly it might have been sewn onto him. He stood just past the threshold, his storm-green eyes scanning the room before they settled on her. Nathan Cole, the name printed across the sale documents. CEO of Cole and Easton Developments, the man the press hailed as the savior of forgotten towns. Emma didn't bother hiding the chill in her tone. "You here to see how fast I'm packing up?" Nathan removed his wet gloves, walked calmly to the counter, and replied, "I came to try the cinnamon rolls." She blinked. "Excuse me? What? You didn't know? Folks around here say they're the best in all of Savannah." His eyes held hers, not mocking, but focused in a way that made her feel oddly exposed. On the tray, 3 cinnamon rolls still sat warm. She had no plans to sell them, but something about letting even him walk out without tasting them felt wrong. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was habit. $35, she said flatly. He pulled out a crisp 100 and placed it on the counter. "Keep the change." Nathan took one bite and then slowly closed his eyes. For a fleeting moment, the polished businessman in front of her vanished, replaced by something softer, almost boyish. Emma didn't know why it struck her, but the sight tugged at something deep inside her chest. It had been 3 days, and Emma still couldn't forget the look on his face, that fleeting vulnerability when he took that first bite of her mother's cinnamon roll. That morning, the rain had finally stopped, but her heart remained clouded. She was wiping down the wooden counter when the familiar chime of the door echoed again. It was him. Nathan Cole, this time in a crisp white shirt, no coat. He held a leather folder in one hand and wore that same calm expression that unsettled her more than she cared to admit. "Good morning," he said softly. "I'd like to talk. If you have a moment." Emma crossed her arms, leaning slightly against the pastry display. "I'm busy closing down, Mr. Cole." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he placed the folder gently on the counter, as if laying down something fragile. "I don't want this bakery to disappear," he said. "Instead, I'd like to offer you the position of head pastry chef at the boutique hotel we're building here. I want to preserve this flavor and let it live on in a new form." Emma froze. "You'd have full creative control," he continued. "You can use your family recipes, name the menu, earn a competitive salary, full benefits. And if you're interested, I'm also planning a traditional baking workshop under your name." A part of her wanted to laugh. He had taken her place, and now he was offering her a job in her own kitchen. "So, I wouldn't own my mother's bakery anymore. I'd just be an employee in what used to be mine." "No," Nathan said, holding her gaze. "You'd be the soul that keeps it alive." That sentence, and the look in his eyes, firm yet unexpectedly tender, left her unsure whether to be angry or tempted to believe. 3 days had passed since that strange encounter, and Emma Reyes still couldn't stop thinking about the words Nathan Cole had said. She stood in the small kitchen of her bakery, kneading dough mechanically. Everything was covered in a thin layer of white flour, and the silence in the room felt almost heartbreaking. Dough clung to her fingers, the faint scent of cinnamon lingered in the air, but her mind was tangled like a frayed spool of thread. "I don't want this bakery to close, Miss Reyes. I want to invite you to be the head pastry chef for the new boutique hotel here." That sentence echoed in her mind like a recording stuck on repeat. There was no denying it. The offer was more than tempting. A high salary, full benefits, the chance to keep baking every day, to hold on to some part of her mother's legacy. But it came with a cost. She wouldn't be the owner anymore. She wouldn't be the one making the decisions. "You'd be crazy to turn this down," Chloe had said when Emma told her about it. Her best friend was always the practical one, someone who understood the value of an opportunity in an economy that wasn't built for dreamers. "It's not just about the job, Emma. He couldn't take his eyes off you. Don't pretend you didn't notice." Emma let out a short laugh. "Come on. He's a businessman, Chloe. I'm a baker who lives in a tiny apartment and wears the same old apron every day. Guys like him don't go for women like me. Maybe this time you should let yourself be someone worth going for." Before Emma could reply, the doorbell chimed. Her heart thudded in her chest for no good reason, and when the door opened, there he was again, Nathan Cole. He wore a navy gray suit, his dark hair neatly combed, eyes the color of a winter sea. In one hand he held a folder and a quiet, polite smile. "Good morning, Miss Reyes," he said, his warm voice filling the quiet space. Chloe glanced at Emma and quickly slipped into the back kitchen, not without giving her friend a playful nudge and a mischievous smirk. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," Emma replied, gripping her apron slightly to steady herself. "Back for more cinnamon rolls?" "I think I might be addicted," he joked, placing the folder on the counter. "But today, I'm here for another reason." He slid the folder toward her. "This is the revised contract. It includes everything we discussed and a few changes I think you'll find more comfortable." Emma glanced through the pages. There were new details, more flexible terms, improved working conditions, and most notably, a small line at the bottom: creative freedom, personalized pastry section, panaderia, Emma. She looked up, meeting his gaze. "I'm still not sure I'll say yes." Nathan nodded. "I'm not asking you to decide right away, but I do have a request." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Let me show you that I'm serious, not just about the project, but about what it could become." "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" "There's a fundraising gala this Friday night. It'll be held at the hotel. The attendees will be partners, investors, and people connected to the project. I'd like you to come, not as an employee, but as a collaborator." Emma blinked. "A fancy party? Someone like her? I don't have anything to wear to a place like that." Nathan smiled, leaning in slightly. "There's a boutique on the ground floor of the hotel. Talented Mexican designers. Go pick out anything you like. Think of it as part of the negotiation." Then he gently lifted her hand, raising it as if it were the most natural thing in the world, and pressed a soft kiss to the back of it. Emma stood frozen, her heart thundering in her chest. "Give me a chance, just one night," he said softly. "I think you'll see things differently." The emerald green dress Emma Reyes finally chose, after nearly 2 hours of hesitation at the hotel boutique, hugged her figure with such grace and softness that she barely recognized herself in the full-length mirror of her tiny apartment. Her light brown hair had been skillfully pinned into a low chignon by Chloe Turner, with a few loose curls framing her face. A touch of soft makeup highlighted her green eyes, now brighter, deeper, carrying the weight of an untold story. "If Nathan Cole doesn't drop to one knee tonight, I'm officially declaring that men have lost all sense of beauty," Chloe said half-jokingly, as she adjusted the dress strap on Emma's shoulder. "You look stunning, Emma. If your mom could see you now, I swear she'd be crying proud tears." The mention of her mother tightened something in Emma's chest. Would she have supported her daughter getting involved in a high-stakes project like this, with a man from an entirely different world? "I'm only going for business," Emma said quietly, though even she didn't believe the detached tone in her voice. Chloe raised an eyebrow, handing her a dainty clutch purse. "Right, and I'm the Queen of England, face it." "You're trembling." The doorbell rang. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Nathan had said he'd send a driver, but she never imagined he would come himself. She stepped to the window and gently pulled back the curtain. "Oh my God," Chloe breathed. "If that's the driver, luxury car companies are clearly hiring runway models now." There he stood, Nathan Cole, impeccably dressed in a tailored black suit and crisp white shirt, the streetlight casting soft shadows on his sharply defined face. One arm rested casually on the sleek black car door, his sea-mule eyes shimmering like a galaxy in the night. Emma walked down the stairs on shaky legs, silently thanking herself for practicing in heels all afternoon. When she opened the door, Nathan's eyes drifted over her with a gaze that felt like a slow, deliberate caress. "Emma," he murmured, his voice slightly hoarse. "You look breathtaking." She blushed, looking down. "I'm not sure this dress was the right choice." Nathan stepped forward, gently took her hand and spun her in a slow turn. "Perfect. This color makes your eyes even more radiant." They entered the car together. On the way to the hotel, they sat in a comfortable silence. Only soft music played from the speakers, and the city lights flowed quietly past the windows. As the car pulled up to the entrance, lined with elegant vehicles arriving one after another, Nathan placed his hand gently over hers. "You're going to be just fine. Just be yourself. That honesty of yours, it's what I admire most." Emma nodded slightly. They stepped into the main hall, where the soft glow of hundreds of candles and crystal chandeliers merged with the graceful sound of strings. Almost instantly, all eyes turned to them. Nathan Cole, an icon of power, was not accompanied by a fellow executive or a fashion model, but by a woman no one recognized. A woman of quiet strength and unassuming beauty who stood beside him with calm pride. A woman who, for a few seconds, made the entire gala pause. And then she appeared. A striking woman in a crimson dress that hugged every curve. Jet black hair cascaded down her back, and her eyes gleamed with something sharp. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sabrina," Nathan nodded. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I," she replied, then turned to Emma. "And you are?" "Emma Reyes," she answered calmly. "I'm heading the pastry concept for the hotel." "Oh," Sabrina smiled slyly. "Another talent Nathan's discovered. He does have a gift for finding the right people for the right projects." Her words floated like silk, but cut like glass. Emma's spine stiffened. Something in the room shifted. After Sabrina walked away, Emma asked bluntly, "Who was she?" "An ex," Nathan replied with a small sigh. "We used to work together. It didn't end well." Emma studied his face, her mind now swimming with questions. If Nathan had used this same approach with other women, how could she trust anything he said? On the drive home, sitting beside him in silence, Emma finally asked, "Did you ever tell her about your grandmother's bakery in New Orleans?" Nathan hesitated. The flicker of pause across his face was brief, but enough to plant a seed of doubt in her heart. And suddenly, the warmth she'd begun to feel, the laughter, the music, his hand over hers, curdled into something uncertain. It wasn't anger that followed, it was fear. That maybe, just maybe, she had fallen too fast into a story that wasn't hers to keep. 3 days had passed since the gala. Emma hadn't responded to any of Nathan's texts or calls, not out of anger, but because she needed space to separate feeling from reason. Her mother's recipe book lay open on the kitchen table, pages stained with butter and a faint scent of cinnamon. But today, those familiar lines no longer offered comfort. Her heart was heavy with just one question. Did he ever truly understand what it means to lose a bakery like I have? Without another thought, Emma slipped the book into her bag, called a car, and set off for New Orleans. The house stood on a quiet street with red brick walls and a white picket fence. Yellow chrysanthemums bloomed on the porch, and a small brass wind chime danced gently in the humid breeze. Just as she raised her hand to knock, the door opened. "Nathan?" No suit, no executive edge, just a man in a faded shirt, his face worn from sleepless nights. "You came," he whispered, like he wasn't sure it was real. "I need the truth." In the kitchen, he poured 2 cups of coffee and set them on a well-worn wooden table. Then he pulled out an old photograph. A boy with messy brown hair kneading dough beside an older woman whose eyes looked exactly like his. "This is my grandmother, Ethel's Hearth. Her bakery ran here for over 50 years. They tried everything to push her out. When she died, I promised I'd never let that happen again. Every project since, I've tried to protect what's real." Emma looked at him, not with suspicion now, but with something deeper. There was no CEO in his eyes, only a grandson who had once watched someone he loved lose everything. "And me?" she asked softly. "What am I in all of this?" Nathan stepped forward, lowering himself onto one knee in front of her. Not with pride, not with charm, but with sincerity and vulnerability. "At first, maybe I thought you reminded me of someone," he began softly. "But then, when you stood up and faced the world, When you baked that last cinnamon roll like hope still mattered, I knew you weren't like anyone else. You were yourself. You are the one I don't just want to help. I want to walk beside. Tears slipped quietly down Emma Reyes's cheeks. I was scared, Nathan, she whispered. Scared that I was just another role in your story. I understand, but I don't need a role, he said gently. I need someone who puts her whole heart into every pastry she makes. Someone who sees the value in the small, honest things. He reached out, brushing her cheek softly with his fingertips. And if you'll let me, I want you to be the one who stays. Emma looked at him, surrounded by the old kitchen, by the scent of flour and wood, by the memory of a woman long gone and the promise of a man who had changed. I don't know what the future holds, she said, her voice trembling. Neither do I, Nathan smiled, but I know where we can begin. She nodded, taking his hand in hers. After that night in New Orleans, Emma didn't give an answer. Not right away. They spent a few quiet days together in Ethel's old house, baking, revisiting forgotten recipes, and letting the past speak. No promises were made, no plans rushed, just honesty and silence shared between two people who had both lost something once dear. When Emma returned to Savannah, she didn't bring a decision. She brought something far more powerful: trust. 3 months later, the Magnolia Academy opened its doors. 1 year on, the building that once held Sweet Magnolia now housed a warm culinary haven where Emma taught classes, her spirit filling the space like cinnamon in the air. She was no longer the girl behind the counter, exhausted and afraid. She had become a guide for women stepping out of their own small kitchens and into possibility. In class, Emma leaned over to adjust the cuff of an older student. "A good dough's like a good heart, soft when it needs to be," she smiled. The bell above the door chimed gently. Nathan stepped in, still in a tailored suit, but with eyes no longer focused on the next deal. Now, they only searched for one thing: her. Their gaze met as naturally as breath. "When class wraps up, there's something I want to show you," he said quietly. After the class, he led her out to the back porch. In his hand, a small velvet box, the color of midnight sky. "I never thought I'd love again," he began, voice low. "But you came like soft rain after a long drought." He opened the box, a simple ring, set with a deep blue sapphire, steadfast and true. "Emma Reyes," he said, eyes shining in the late afternoon light. "Will you marry me?" Among the scent of cinnamon, golden sunlight, and memories made whole again, she whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." That night, when everything had quieted down, Emma Reyes stood on the rooftop, hands wrapped around a mug of hot cocoa. Nathan Cole approached from behind and gently draped a coat over her shoulders. "I've been thinking," he whispered, "how long it took for us to find each other. Maybe not that long," she smiled softly. "Maybe we just had to get lost first, to recognize where home truly is." Nathan bowed his head and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I've never been this sure of anything," he murmured. "I want to spend the rest of my life learning how to bake, teaching with you, and if you'll let me, building a real home together." Emma looked up at him. There were no flowers, no ring, just one sincere question, and two hearts beating in harmony. "Then shall we rise a shared dream together?" she whispered, eyes glistening. Nathan smiled. "My home is your home." And they both laughed, beneath a sky full of stars with the lingering scent of cinnamon from the evening's baking class, surrounded by two hearts once broken, now finding peace in the warmth of a new love.
The last individual Aiden Rivers anticipated encountering in a serene family eatery was the woman who had disappeared from his life 3 years prior, much less seated at a table with 3 young boys who all possessed his eyes, his hair, and his features. With just a single glance, all that he believed about his history and what lay ahead started to come apart at the seams. Aiden Rivers was not the sort of man who found himself in the wrong place. Each moment of his day was meticulously planned, overseen, and refined by a dedicated team of aides who understood the importance of sticking to the script. That afternoon, however, his driver made an unexpected wrong turn off the freeway because of a sudden traffic change. Instead of reaching the upscale dinner meeting at a lavish hotel downtown, Aiden ended up outside a quaint, hidden Italian restaurant that seemed to have remained unchanged for at least 20 years. He was poised to depart, yet an unseen force held him back. Perhaps it was the flickering sign in the window, perhaps the aroma of garlic bread drifting through the air, or perhaps, though he would never confess it, the burden of exhaustion he had long suppressed. He instructed the driver to remain and ventured inside by himself. The eatery buzzed with warmth and chatter, a cozy family establishment adorned with eclectic tablecloths, candles flickering low, and the joyful sounds of children echoing throughout the space. He selected a spot by the window, took out his phone, and intended to respond to a handful of emails before venturing back out. The ambience didn't suit him. It was excessively vibrant, excessively chaotic. Yet, there was an element that caused him to hesitate. As he was in the midst of composing a message, a sudden eruption of laughter floated in from behind him. He instinctively raised his gaze, his eyes sweeping across the room until they settled on a table positioned near the center. It was at that moment he caught sight of her. Crimson. He paused for a moment to absorb the information. She had aged a bit, yet there was no doubt it was still her. The same thick dark hair, now gathered into a loose braid, the same fluid movements, the way she inclined her head when she absorbed someone's words. Then he noticed what was around her, 3 little boys, each with dark brown hair and strikingly bright blue eyes. One attempted to maintain a precarious balance of a breadstick atop his nose. One was engaged in a playful dance with a crayon. The third was speaking at such a rapid pace that she found it difficult to follow along. Aiden's heart plummeted to the ground. He observed, captivated, as one of the boys glanced up and chuckled. And it was the sound of his laughter. His precise laughter. The very one his mother would highlight during his childhood. His breath hitched in his throat as he leaned in a bit, squinting, attempting to persuade himself that this wasn't what it unmistakably appeared to be. Indeed, it was. He could perceive it in the contours of their expressions. Within the confines of their jaws. In their gaze, reflections of his essence. These were no ordinary children. They belonged to him. The impact was so profound that it muted all other thoughts within him. All the fury he had harbored for her, all the lingering questions, the manner in which she had vanished from his life 3 years prior without a word, it all surged back, but now it was intertwined with something much more intense. Incredulity. And an emotion teetering on the edge of sorrow. Scarlett had yet to lay eyes on him. She assisted one of the boys in slicing a meatball, her demeanor gentle and understanding, blissfully oblivious to the turmoil unfolding mere feet away. He was utterly immobilized. Struggling for air. It was hard to fathom that the woman he had once envisioned sharing a life with was now right there, enveloped in a reality that had evidently unfolded in his absence. In that instant, Aiden Rivers, the CEO, the billionaire, the untouchable, experienced a sensation he hadn't encountered in years. Helpless. Aiden remained motionless, his heartbeat echoing in his ears, while countless thoughts clashed and crumbled within his mind. He continued to gaze at Scarlett and the 3 boys, a look of bewildered fascination on his face, as if his mind was struggling to process what his eyes had already revealed. For a man who thrived on absolutes, on numbers, and control and certainty, the scene before him shattered something deep within the core of his existence. They bore his resemblance. Each one of them. Identical dark hair, striking blue eyes, and those nuanced expressions that he saw reflected in his own gaze. It was undeniable. These were not merely children, they were his sons. Yet, she had kept it from him all along. He observed Scarlett as she delicately wiped one boy's mouth with a napkin, while gently admonishing another for attempting to crawl under the table. She appeared weary, yet still resilient. She possessed a subtle power, one that stirred memories within him. The kind that had simultaneously captivated and repelled him in those days. He attempted to bridge the gap between the woman before him now and the memory of the one who had silently departed from his life 3 years prior, leaving no explanation in her wake. She had vanished without a trace. On a sunny afternoon, they found themselves on his balcony, laughter filling the air as they shared takeout and tossed around absurd baby names for a future they playfully envisioned. In the blink of an eye, she vanished. No note. Farewell is not an option. Only quietude. He had sought her out. Engaged the services of private investigators. Drawn threads. Placed calls. Her apartment stood desolate, the phone silent, bank accounts shuttered. It felt as though she had completely disappeared from existence. It had shattered a part of him, a part that was delicate, optimistic, and deeply human. Following that, he immersed himself in his tasks. He expanded the business, achieved his first 100 million, acquired a penthouse, and established a brand so formidable that no one ventured to inquire about the past. Yet, deep down, he always found himself pondering her fate. At that moment, clarity dawned upon him. She had not merely departed. She had brought his children along with her. His impulse was to march over, seek explanations, elevate his tone. Yet, an invisible force restrained him. Perhaps it was the manner in which one of the boys extended his hand toward her, prompting her to grasp it instinctively. Perhaps it was the effortless way she moved through their turmoil. Or perhaps it was the peculiar, unaccustomed pain unfurling in his chest, the burden of time that had slipped away. At last, as though attuned to the weight of his gaze, she shifted her head and caught sight of him. Their gazes intertwined. As their eyes locked, time itself appeared to pause in that instant. Her body tightened immediately. Her eyes grew wide. In that fleeting moment, she resembled a person who had just encountered a specter. Her lips parted as if she were about to speak, yet silence enveloped her. He rose gradually. Her gaze trailed after him as he approached her table. Initially, the boys were oblivious to his presence, engrossed as they were in their squabble over crayons. Yet Scarlett remained still. Held my breath. He paused a short distance away. Crimson. Her name tumbled from his lips with the weight of a boulder. Weighty. Authentic. The noise caused her to recoil, just a bit. Aiden, she murmured. Her voice had a unique quality. Still gentle, yet now intertwined with weariness and an additional weight, remorse. He gazed at the boys. They remained oblivious to the events that were taking shape around them. Yet Aiden found himself unable to look away from them. He gestured with a hint of discretion. Here it is. She gave a subtle nod. Truth only. Without a doubt. Indeed. Every ounce of air escaped him. The reality was evident. Inarguable. I believe we need to have a conversation, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Scarlett looked down at the boys, then turned her gaze back to him. Her shoulders squared as if preparing for the inevitable collision. Indeed, she murmured softly. We ought to. Scarlett emerged into the open, her movements deliberate and measured, as though each step bore a newfound significance now that her secret was shared with another. Aiden trailed behind, his mind racing, thoughts echoing loudly and unrestrained in the quiet space that separated them. The restaurant door closed softly, cutting off the cheerful sounds and cozy atmosphere of the families within. The air outside had a distinct crispness to it. Weighty. So genuine that it felt like a struggle to catch my breath. They lingered at the brink of the sidewalk, hidden from the gaze of the restaurant's windows. Scarlett folded her arms firmly across her chest, her posture rigid, chin lifted just enough to convey a sense of defiance, as if bracing herself for an inevitable confrontation that she was determined to face regardless of the outcome. Aiden, however, remained silent for a moment. He merely gazed at her. In her expression, her gaze, the very ones he once etched in his mind when life seemed overwhelmingly intricate. She appeared more mature. Not in a negative sense, but rather more down-to-earth. Yet, there was a spark in her gaze that had not existed previously. A profound melancholy. Or perhaps merely years of enduring existence. He overlooked the questions that were right in front of him. Not at this moment. The reality was painfully bare, achingly vulnerable. He began with something gentler, despite the lingering heat in his throat. Why didn't you share that with me? Scarlett blinked, her eyelids fluttering in a deliberate, measured manner. Because I was filled with fear, she said. About you. From your perspective. Everything was moving so quickly when I discovered it. He tightened his jaw, battling the surge of anger that threatened to surface too soon. What, precisely, is causing the fear? I wouldn't desire them. No, she replied swiftly. I had a feeling you would. I was certain you would show up, take charge, and completely transform your life if necessary. That was my greatest fear. That took him by surprise. You left, believing I would be overly concerned. Scarlett let out a breath. I departed because I was unsure how to endure being engulfed by you and your existence. I anticipated the outcome. Captivating titles. Photographic devices. Agreements. Discussions. They would be scrutinized closely as they grew, and I just couldn't bring myself to do that to them. Or for you. You stood at the brink of something monumental, Aiden. I observed your ascent, swift and impressive, and I feared being the burden that hindered your progress. He slowly shook his head, attempting to take it all in. You were never a burden. You were the one genuine aspect of my existence that felt real. You didn't even allow me the opportunity to make a choice. Her expression faltered, the corners of her mouth tightening. I never intended to be a weight on your shoulders. My intention was to keep them safe. And perhaps, indeed, perhaps I sought to shield myself as well. He strode once, then pivoted to face her, his gaze intense. You shielded them by preventing their father from reaching them. I shielded them from turning into a narrative, she retorted, her voice escalating. From being traded and exchanged by sensational publications. Being utilized as a tool by individuals who are solely focused on your business. Do you really believe I haven't reflected on my actions each day for the past 3 years? A prolonged stillness ensued. Neither of them averted their gaze. The silence enveloped them, a stillness born from the intimacy of shared histories now marred by the unfamiliarity of their evolving selves. At last, Aiden's voice took on a gentler tone. No need to explain your actions, Scarlett. Not at this moment. However, there is one thing I must ascertain. She lingered, tension coiling in her shoulders. Are they aware of my identity? She took a deep breath. They are aware of their father's presence. An admirable individual. I wasn't prepared to introduce someone to their world until I was confident they were prepared as well. Aiden inclined his head with deliberation. In his eyes, there lingered a deep pain, yet intertwined with it was an undeniable sense of resolve. He spoke softly, I'm here now. And I'm here to stay. Scarlett remained silent, yet a subtle change flickered across her expression. A glimmer of skepticism, perhaps tinged with optimism. She shifted her gaze, peering through the window at the table where the boys remained, blissfully ignorant that the very foundation of their existence was on the verge of transformation. As she cast her gaze back at him, her voice emerged as little more than a whisper. I'm unsure about how to open up to you, Aiden. Then allow me to work through this with you, he said. And for the first time since she'd turned her back on him, she stood her ground. The following morning, Aiden found it impossible to concentrate on anything. His phone vibrated with notifications of upcoming meetings, a pile of unread emails loomed over him, and his assistant tapped twice to inquire about his participation in the board call, yet he paid no attention to any of it. His mind lingered beyond the confines of that quaint eatery, positioned on the pavement opposite Scarlett, ensnared in the stillness that ensued after the revelation. For a man accustomed to making swift decisions, who brokered billion-dollar deals before the sun rose, he now found himself ensnared in uncertainty, unsure of how to proceed with even the next step. He was lost, uncertain of the rules that once guided him. He was a father. 3 young lads. His offspring. He had overlooked it all, their initial steps, their first utterances, their very first birthdays. Everything vanished, hidden away in years he could never reclaim. The idea gnawed at him, leaving an unsettling emptiness that filled him with dread. Not due to a sense of guilt, but because he became aware of how deeply he desired something he had never envisioned before. He had a deeper desire to connect with them. He was eager to understand them. To be a part of their world in a manner that transcended wealth, heritage, or reputation. By early afternoon, he found himself back in his car, stationed a block away from Scarlett's unassuming apartment building. It wasn't in an undesirable location, yet it was evident she had opted for a life of simplicity, privacy, and security. He had kept his arrival a secret from her. A part of him understood the possibility that she might not answer, yet the urge to see them once more was undeniable. Even from afar. As he watched her emerge with the boys snugly wrapped in their light jackets, he felt a sudden catch in his breath. They were all intertwined, a delightful disarray, voices overlapping, gesturing at birds, leaves, the vast expanse above. Scarlett noticed him right away. Her expression was one of calm assurance. She paused for a moment, then approached him, her steps measured and intentional. The boys trailed behind her like eager little ducklings, 2 of them pulling at her arms while the third meandered, captivated by a stick he had discovered. "We're heading to the park," she announced as she approached him. Her voice carried a sense of calmness, lacking any chill. "If you'd like, you can join us for a walk." He nodded, struggling to contain the wave of appreciation that welled up inside him. "I would appreciate that." Initially, they strolled side by side, enveloped in an uncomfortable quiet. The boys dashed forward, playfully pursuing one another. Aiden observed them as if witnessing an enchanting spectacle come to life. Each motion they executed seemed almost dreamlike to him. He had lost out on so much. In the end, one of the boys, the tiniest among them, stumbled and fell. Aiden surged ahead as Scarlett began to move. He knelt down, carefully examining the boy's hands for any scrapes. "Hey," Aiden murmured gently, wiping away the grime. "Are you all right, my friend?" The young lad gazed up at him, his eyes sparkling with wonder. "I'm not a friend," he remarked with a sulky expression. "My name is Liam." Aiden stood still. Scarlett offered a subtle smile from the shadows. She confirmed that it's Liam. "Jake is the individual dressed in red. And Sam is the one who always tunes out." Aiden sensed a change stirring within him. "Hi, Liam," he repeated, his voice gentler this time. I am your father." The young lad inclined his head thoughtfully. "Is that so?" He gave a slight nod. "Indeed. Truly." Liam observed him intently for a brief moment, then suddenly, he encircled Aiden's neck with his small arms. It was unexpected. It was spontaneous. It was merely a fleeting instant, a natural response of youth. And it unraveled him. Aiden remained crouched in that spot long after Liam had dashed ahead. Scarlett stood beside him, her expression a mystery, yet her arms had unfolded. Neither of them uttered a word. There was no necessity for her to do so. He sensed it in the quiet that enveloped them, a new beginning stirring to life. Upon returning to the apartment, she extended an invitation for him to come inside. Not for a dialogue, not for understanding, but because the boys were eager to display their superhero wall, a chaotic assembly of drawings, stickers, and crayon scribbles affixed to their bedroom. He stepped inside, eager to soak in every moment, every nuance, their voices, their habits, the effortless way they embraced her. In the heart of their universe, surrounded by toys strewn at his feet and the sound of laughter resonating from the hallway, Aiden came to a realization that was both daunting and exquisite. He longed to be more than just a guest in their lives. He wished to remain. Aiden started appearing daily, always with an invitation in hand. He reached out to Scarlett first, consistently inquiring, never taking anything for granted. With each simple yes or brief, courteous response, she subtly widened the gap just a bit more. The boys accepted his unexpected arrival without hesitation. Children embraced certainty in a way that adults often struggle to understand. They welcomed him as they welcomed all things in their world, with an open curiosity and a refreshing honesty that made Aiden feel as though he was rediscovering life from the very beginning. He discovered that Liam had a passion for dinosaurs, that Sam possessed the ability to name every planet in the solar system, and that Jake, though reserved, radiated warmth when someone truly engaged with him. Initially, they referred to him as Aiden, a name that pierced him more than he revealed. He chose not to correct them. He preferred not to impose anything. One afternoon, after assisting Sam in constructing a rocket ship from cardboard boxes in the living room, Jake settled beside him, leaned in, and gently asked, "Are you going to be my dad now?" The inquiry struck him with more force than any surprise attack in the conference room ever could. He gazed into Jake's intense blue eyes and responded in the only manner possible. "If that is your desire." Jake nodded in silence, yet as the evening unfolded, all three boys began to refer to him as Dad. No formalities. No alert. A mere transition, as straightforward yet deep as the flip of a page. Scarlett observed everything in silence. She maintained her distance, not devoid of warmth, but rather cautious. For years, she had meticulously constructed barriers around herself and her children, fortifications designed to shield them from a world she had once feared could bring about their ruin. In that moment, the universe had taken up residence in her living room, crafting peanut butter sandwiches and mending broken toy trucks with nothing but duct tape and sheer willpower. The upcoming weeks unfolded into a subtle metamorphosis that neither of them had anticipated. Aiden began to appear in the boys' lives consistently, not as a disturbance or upheaval, but as a reliable presence. Scarlett, ever vigilant, maintained her defenses initially. She provided only what was needed, and Aiden refrained from pressing further. He understood that she was poised, anticipating whether he would vanish once more, if his existence was merely another act, another fleeting spark from a man who resided in a realm constructed on mastery and separation. Yet, on this occasion, he found himself without a way out. He arrived on Sundays for excursions to the park. He arrived with art supplies and eagerly participated in finger painting sessions, resulting in his expensive shoes being splattered with glitter and glue. He assisted in constructing blanket forts in the living room and swiftly discovered that Sam had a strong aversion to peas, Jake had a passion for dinosaurs, and Liam demanded to be referred to as Captain Lightning at least once each day. He faced no inquiries from them. They embraced him effortlessly, as if he had always been a part of them, as though they had been anticipating his arrival all along. The acceptance shattered him in the most subtle yet profound manner. Scarlett observed everything with a watchful gaze. She had never encountered him in this manner before. The man she recalled from their history was refined, composed, and somewhat aloof in his warmth. This portrayal, this figure on the floor fastening shoelaces, crafting bedtime tales, lingering in the quiet after they drifted off, was a completely different essence. She was at a loss for how to handle that. Every aspect of her that had toughened to endure now seemed laid bare. Not due to any demands he made, but rather because he made none at all. One evening, after the boys had finally drifted off to sleep, Scarlett entered the kitchen to discover Aiden quietly scrubbing the dishes. Without a single question or utterance, he simply rolled up his sleeves and began to tidy up. The image of him standing there, seemingly out of place yet oddly at ease, took her by surprise. "You don't need to do that," she said, leaning against the doorway. He glanced back, a subtle smile playing on his lips. "I understand. However, I have the desire to." With her arms crossed, she observed him intently for a brief moment. "You consistently excelled at pursuing your desires." He shut off the faucet, taking his time to dry his hands before turning to face her completely. "Not every time. I excelled at fulfilling what I believed I should desire. There exists a distinction. Her reply was not immediate. Her defenses remained intact, yet an undeniable warmth was blossoming within her, despite her struggle to resist it. I'm uncertain about placing my trust in this. Any of it. I understand, he replied softly. And I'm not expecting you to place your trust in me right away. Allow me to remain in this space. Allow me to demonstrate. She cast her gaze downward, her eyes tracing the patterns on the floor. You've overlooked it all. Their initial utterances, their inaugural strides, celebrations of birth, bouts of illness, outbursts of emotion. You overlooked everything. He gave a slight nod. I understand. And that time is lost to me forever. Yet, I find myself present at this moment. And if you allow me, I won't overlook anything again. The stillness enveloped them, yet it carried warmth. It was dense with unspoken words, something vibrant and throbbing. She yearned to trust him. Desired to welcome him again. Yet, the fear of the unknown gripped her heart. To love him once more would mean not only risking her own heart but also the hearts of 3 others. Aiden moved ahead, maintaining a respectful distance, ensuring his voice carried clearly without any physical contact. I have changed since you were last here. Perhaps you have also transformed in ways you didn't expect. Perhaps that's perfectly fine. She lifted her gaze, locking eyes with him. They lacked any semblance of performance. Lack of drive. There is no plan in place. Only honesty. I need time, she said at last. You can have it all, he responded. With that, she gave a slight nod. It was not a commitment. It was not an act of forgiveness. Yet, it marked the initial genuine stride towards something they both believed had vanished. Something delicate, yet deserving of an attempt. As the days transitioned into weeks, a fresh cadence started to emerge. It was imperfect, unpredictable, yet it was genuine. Aiden integrated into their daily existence, not through grand gestures or bold proclamations, but through subtle, intentional actions. He began showing up early to assist in preparing the boys for school and lingered long enough to share bedtime stories, even when his work pulled him in different directions. He didn't attempt to win their favor. He refrained from inundating them with presents or ostentatious diversions. He arrived repeatedly, with a calm reliability, as though each moment presented an opportunity to reclaim a fragment of the time he had squandered. Scarlett observed her surroundings with a wary spirit. She longed to convince herself that the man meticulously folding tiny socks on her couch and constructing Lego castles in the living room was the same Aiden she had once adored, yet transformed in all the right ways. Still, the fear lingered within her, never truly fading away. For 3 long years, she had navigated every challenge on her own, facing each tantrum, attending every doctor visit, and making every difficult decision by herself. It had forged her resilience, yet it had also constructed barriers so towering that she often found it difficult to discern whether they were safeguarding her or leaving her alone. As the evening descended and autumn's chill began to settle in, Scarlett nestled on the porch steps, a blanket draped over her shoulders, observing the boys darting after fireflies in the dimming glow. Aiden settled next to her, his elbows propped on his knees, the sleeves of his dress shirt casually rolled up, exuding a quiet ease in a domestic scene that had once felt unfamiliar to him. They mention you constantly these days, she remarked after a prolonged pause. Even in your absence. He gazed at her, his face a mask of mystery. What are their words? She offered a gentle smile. Liam mentioned that your voice resembles Batman's. Jake believes you have the ability to mend anything. Sam inquired whether you're familiar with flying a plane, stating, quote, he's wealthy and wealthy individuals engage in such activities. Aiden chuckled, yet there was a depth of feeling beneath the surface. They are truly remarkable. Indeed, they are, she remarked. And they belong to me. Each breath, each scar, every part of them. I may not have achieved perfection, but I poured my heart and soul into it. He nodded, a grave expression settling on his face. I understand. I always had complete faith in that. Even in my moments of anger, even when the reasons for your departure eluded me. I understood that you were acting in accordance with your convictions. Scarlett's eyes shimmered softly in the dim glow. I remain uncertain about whether it was. I simply understood that I couldn't nurture them in your environment. Perhaps, I was simply unaware of how to do it. Aiden straightened his posture, his voice steady yet resolute. Let's create something fresh. Not my own. Not for you. Ours. A place where they can thrive without having to shed their true selves. She gazed at him intently, her fingers gripping the edges of her blanket with increasing tension. I prefer not to bring them up with someone who may leave when challenges arise. He said, I turned my back on everything but you. The sole thing I truly lament losing was the bond we shared. And now, those individuals. Me. This. I refuse to turn my back. This time, no. What he said was the most exposed and raw expression she had ever encountered. And it shattered a barrier within her. As the night settled in, with the boys tucked away in slumber and the house enveloped in stillness, she presented him with a neatly folded piece of paper. There lay the birth certificates of the boys. His name was absent from the list. Up until this moment, it had not been. I'm prepared for them to discover the truth about their father, she murmured. In accordance with the law. Completely. Beyond mere tales. Aiden stared at the paper for an extended period, burdened by the significance of its implications. This transcended mere parenthood. The theme revolved around the concept of forgiveness. Concerning trust. Reflecting on the experience of being welcomed into a realm that had previously been entirely inaccessible to him. He glanced over his shoulder at her, his tone gentle yet resolute. Thanks a lot. Scarlett nodded, and for the first time, her eyes reflected a newfound certainty. They were in the process of creating something new. Not beginning anew, as what they once possessed had vanished. Yet what awaited them was uncharted territory, an opportunity neither had envisioned they would encounter again. Every difficult discussion, every wound, every quiet evening was worth it. The legal proceedings unfolded at a pace that caught Aiden off guard, yet he chose to remain silent about it. Each encounter with the attorney, every mark made on paper, every thorough investigation, all seemed like progress towards a foundation that felt unshakable, something that wouldn't slip away from him again. He absorbed each moment with a profound sense of respect, as if the documentation finally aligned with the truth he sensed deep within himself. He was their father, not merely in memory or biology, but in presence, in choice, in every morning spent helping them get dressed and every night dedicated to reading until they softly fell asleep. Scarlett observed the change in silence, her mind racing to define the connection unfolding before her. They had not rekindled their relationship, at least not in any formal sense. There was neither a kiss nor any grand romantic declarations. Aiden found himself in her home nearly every day. He was aware of the location of the cereal, which boy required his blanket to be warmed in the dryer before bedtime, and which one continued to wake up plagued by nightmares. He meticulously folded laundry as she managed emails, discovered the art of crafting pancakes adorned with smiley faces, and even took the time to braid Scarlett's hair amidst the morning whirlwind when one of the boys innocently inquired, "Why doesn't Mommy get a turn too?" As the sun dipped below the horizon, the boys were nestled in their beds, and an unusual stillness enveloped the home. Aiden sat on the porch once more, a notebook resting open on his lap. Scarlett stepped outside, cradling 2 mugs of tea, and silently offered him one with a gentle gesture. He accepted it, taken aback by the kindness, and looked at her with a weary yet appreciative gaze. "What is that?" she inquired, gesturing towards the notebook. He paused momentarily before responding. "Titles. Titles. Regarding the trust fund I am establishing. It's not solely for them. For those who share their experience. Children nurtured by resilient mothers who managed everything independently. Scarlett remained silent initially. She took a delicate sip of her tea, her gaze drifting to the serene street beyond. "I never wanted your money," she said eventually, her voice barely above a whisper. "Indeed," he remarked. "That's the reason I wish to offer it." She glanced at him then, and a silence enveloped them, the sort rich with significance yet lacking closure. She remained uncertain about how to navigate all of it, how consistently he had shown up, how tender, how transformed. She yearned to trust that this was not a fleeting moment, that it wasn't merely an overreaction driven by guilt. Yet, a profound voice within her continued to caution her to tread lightly. "What brings you here, Aiden?" she inquired abruptly. "Are the kids the only ones affected?" He took his time before responding. He shut the notebook, placed it down, and turned to fully engage with her. "No," he replied. "It all began with them. However, it's not solely about them. It's you as well." Scarlett breathed out gently, her heart racing in a manner that was both nostalgic and new. "I'm not sure I can bear the thought of losing you once more," she confessed. "If I allow this to escalate and it crumbles, the impact won't be limited to just myself. It will cause them pain as well." He stated that he wasn't requesting you to jump. "Simply to accompany me on this journey. And if I'm unable to, then I shall continue my journey regardless. Regardless of the title, the label, or any other designation. I will remain present. This is precisely where I was meant to be from the very beginning." Her throat constricted. He had no intention of winning her over. He didn't even make an effort to convince her. He was simply speaking the truth. That evening, she chose not to send him away. And when he lingered, dozing on the couch, cocooned in one of the boys' superhero blankets, it wasn't out of necessity, nor was it a matter of his own insistence. It was as if, gradually and softly, he was transforming into a sense of belonging. That year, winter arrived gently, ushering in early twilight and serene mornings blanketed in frost. The boys had reached an age where they could sense the shift in the atmosphere, where the thrill of donning coats and gloves mingled with the anticipation of snow began to stir within them. Scarlett observed them with heightened attention, noting how they rushed into Aiden's embrace the instant he entered, how they leaned against him as if they had always anticipated his presence. At times, it still surprised her, the way it appeared so effortless, so genuine. Yet, the journey to that point was anything but straightforward. She had crafted this existence piece by piece with her own hands, and unexpectedly, Aiden had re-entered it and become an integral part of the structure. One evening, just before the holidays, the house was alive with excitement. The boys busily adorned a petite tree that Scarlett had chosen earlier that week, each one bickering over the privilege of placing their favorite ornament. Aiden settled on the floor amidst the turmoil, grinning as he wrestled with a string of lights that seemed determined to resist his efforts. Scarlett lingered in the doorway, cradling a mug in her hands, observing the scene unfold, allowing herself to embrace the depth and comfort of the moment. Later, once the boys had drifted off and the house embraced a rare tranquility that followed a joyful day, Aiden discovered her perched on the edge of the bed she once occupied in solitude. She remained silent as he entered the room. She gazed at him, her eyes gentle yet cautious, still inquiring about a question he had not fully addressed. He traversed the space and settled next to her, near enough to sense the warmth radiating from her skin yet distant enough to avoid contact. "There's no need to say anything," he remarked. "However, I believe it is necessary for me to do so." She cast a glance in his direction, anticipation hanging in the air. He stated that he hadn't returned to amend what was already done. "I am unable to do that. I've squandered an abundance of time, and it's something I can never reclaim. Yet, I can exist in this moment. I desire to be there for you, for them, in any capacity you allow. Take your time. There are no timelines. Only honesty." Scarlett gazed at her hands for a prolonged moment before she finally found her voice. "This was once the stuff of my dreams. Regarding your return. Yet in the dream, I felt a surge of anger. I shouted. I ensured you worked for it. He offered a soft smile. That seems reasonable. But now that you're here, she continued, all I feel is exhaustion. Exhausted from carrying the weight of it all by myself. Exhausted from the fear of relying on others. There's no need for fear, he said. Relying on others doesn't signify weakness. It exposes my fragility. Then allow yourself to be open, he said softly. Alongside me. She gazed at him, truly gazed at him, and recognized not the figure she had once fled from but the one who had come back and remained. The individual who intertwined strands with unrefined hands, who narrated tales at dusk with an abundance of emotion, who pressed lips to scrape knees and fastened little shoes without ever seeking recognition. The man who transformed, not at her request, but because life necessitated it and he embraced the opportunity to evolve. She extended her hand, allowing it to rest softly on his. I can't bear to face this solitude any longer, she murmured. You won't need to do that again. They refrained from kissing. Not on that particular night. It wasn't focused on that. It was in the gentle way her head settled against his shoulder moments later. His hand found hers and held on tightly, refusing to release its grip. The silence that once lingered between them transformed into a serene tranquility. Time slipped by. The documents have been completed. Aiden's name was inscribed, officially and eternally, alongside theirs. He settled into a quaint little house just 2 blocks down, providing Scarlett with some breathing room, yet never quite enough. They navigated co-parenting effortlessly, filled with warmth and laughter. Gradually, the affection that had long been concealed beneath layers of hurt and separation started to emerge once more, authentic this time, fortified by all it had endured. On a serene Sunday morning, with snow gently cascading outside and the boys nestled between them on the couch, cartoons softly flickering on the screen, Scarlett turned to Aiden and perceived not the man he once was or the errors of his past. She noticed the man who remained. The individual who arrived. The individual who, despite all challenges and after enduring every tempest, had returned home. For me, the conclusion of this narrative transcends mere resolution. It embodies a subtle victory of love that is deserved, not taken for granted. It's a story of 2 individuals separated by fear and silence, yet they rediscovered each other through presence, growth, and patience. The strength of this ending lies not in a flawless resolution, but in the characters' decision to embrace one another once more, carrying their scars, their past, and the burdens of their experiences. Aiden does not come back as a hero. He returns as someone ready to shed his former identity, to appear each day not with lofty vows, but with steady reliability. Scarlett is not one to easily forgive, she fiercely guards her children, maintains her boundaries, and only allows her heart to reopen when she genuinely perceives a transformation in him. Their reunion feels justified, rooted not in nostalgia or fantasy, but in the individuals they have grown into and the commitment they are ready to embrace together. What I appreciate most is how the narrative respects healing, not merely as a concept, but as a tangible, everyday journey. The characters acknowledge the pain of the past without pretense. They recognize it, and they create something greater as a result. In a landscape dominated by instant solutions and shallow transformations, this conclusion stands out as something truly exceptional. It's soft. It has a solid foundation. And that is what renders it truly memorable.
A struggling mechanic, a powerful businessman, a chance encounter that changes everything. The setting sun painted the sky golden as the quiet town of Maplewood settled into the evening. Sienna's auto haven still buzzed with life, the rhythmic clanking of tools mixing with the familiar scent of motor oil. Sienna Carter, a talented yet overlooked mechanic, was finishing up her last job of the day. This was her life, fixing cars, helping those in need, and expecting nothing more. But that night, fate had other plans. A sleek Lexus LC500 screeched into the garage, steam billowing from the hood. The driver's door swung open, and out stepped Nathaniel Nate Ellis, CEO of Ellis Automotive, one of the most prestigious luxury car brands in the country. Sharp suit, polished shoes, he looked like he belonged anywhere but here. His expression, a mix of irritation and disbelief. Sienna wiped the sweat off her brow, barely suppressing a smirk as she eyed him. "Let me guess, your fancy car finally gave up on you?" Nate sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "More like it picked the worst possible time to stage a mutiny," Sienna smirked, already reaching for her tools. She had no idea that this moment would change her life forever. Nate crossed his arms, watching as Sienna popped the hood. Steam hissed out, a harsh reminder that even the most well-designed machines had their breaking points. He hated being stranded, especially in a small-town garage whose name he hadn't even bothered to remember. Sienna glanced up as she inspected the engine. "You got lucky. A few more miles and you'd be calling a tow truck." Nate huffed, irritation lacing his voice. "Not like I had a choice." Sienna smirked, shaking her head. "Lexus, LC500 V8 engine, but it looks like your cooling system couldn't handle the heat. You keep up with maintenance?" Nate exhaled sharply. "I pay people to do that." Sienna tisked, rolling up her sleeves. "Well, looks like whoever you paid isn't doing a great job." Nate arched an eyebrow. Not many people spoke to him like that, at least not when they knew who he was. But Sienna? She didn't seem to care. She wasn't trying to impress him, just stating facts. "So," he said, crossing his arms, "can you fix it?" She nodded. "Yeah, but I'll need at least 2 hours." He frowned. "I've got a meeting in Chicago tomorrow morning." "Then I guess you're staying in Maplewood tonight." She didn't even look up, already focused on the repair. Nate let out a long sigh. He hated being at the mercy of circumstances, but tonight he had no choice. As she worked, he found himself watching her, not out of suspicion, but curiosity. There was something different about her, something real. Finally, he broke the silence. "How long have you been doing this?" Sienna tightened a bolt before answering. "Since I was old enough to hold a wrench." Not many women choose this line of work. Sienna arched an eyebrow. Not many CEOs drive their own cars without a chauffeur. That made Nate chuckle, for the first time that night. 2 hours later, Sienna wiped her hands on a rag and shut the hood. "You're all set." Nate nodded, reaching for his wallet. "How much?" Sienna shook her head. "Don't worry about it." His brow furrowed. "I can pay. And I don't need it. But if you really want to repay me, pay it forward. Help someone else when they need it." For a moment, Nate just stared at her, as if trying to understand something deeper. Then, he slowly put his wallet away. "Thanks." Sienna only nodded, watching as he drove off into the night. She had no idea this wouldn't be the last time she saw him. 4 days had passed since that night. Sienna had gone back to business as usual, barely sparing a thought for the sharp-dressed man with the Lexus. To her, he was just another customer, a passing face in the long line of people she'd helped over the years. But then, one afternoon, she heard a familiar engine purr outside the garage. Frowning, she looked up. That same Lexus LC500 was back, only this time there was no smoke curling from the hood. The driver's door opened and out stepped Nate. Gone was the tense, frustrated businessman from before. This time his expression was almost amused, a slight smirk playing at the corner of his lips. He was dressed more casually today, dark jeans and a button-up with the sleeves rolled up. Yet, even without the expensive suit, he still carried the air of a man who was used to giving orders, not taking them. Sienna crossed her arms and leaned against the workbench, eyes narrowing. Car acting up again? Nate smirked. Nope, this time, I'm here for a different reason. Sienna raised an eyebrow. I'm intrigued. A CEO making a second visit to a tiny garage like this? That's unusual. Nate took a step closer, slipping his hands into his pockets. I want to offer you a job. Sienna let out a soft chuckle. You're serious? Dead serious, Nate nodded. Ellis Automotive is looking for a lead specialist in vintage car restoration. I want you on my team. She hesitated for only a second before shaking her head. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested. Nate's brow lifted. You're turning it down without even thinking about it? There's nothing to think about. I don't want to be a cog in a corporate machine. Nate studied her, his sharp blue eyes assessing her in a way that made her shift slightly. After a long pause, he spoke again, this time more carefully. And maybe you'll consider this. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a sleek black envelope, setting it down on the workbench in front of her. Sienna frowned, eyeing it suspiciously before picking it up and flipping it open. What she saw inside made her heart skip a beat. It was a proposal for expanding her garage, fully funded by Nate Ellis himself. This isn't a job offer, he said, watching her closely. It's an opportunity. You run it. You call the shots. I just invest. Sienna's grip tightened around the envelope as she processed what was happening. She had no idea that this moment was only the beginning of something much bigger. Sienna stared at the expansion proposal, her fingers unconsciously gripping the edge of the envelope. This was the kind of opportunity people in her industry would kill for. But for her, it wasn't that simple. She took a slow breath before looking up at Nate. Why are you doing this? Nate crossed his arms, his expression as composed as ever. Because I believe in your potential. Sienna let out a soft, skeptical laugh. You barely know me. You met me once, I fixed your car, and now you suddenly believe in me enough to make an investment like this? Nate was quiet for a moment before he answered. Because everyone I've ever met wanted something from me, except you. You just did what was right, no expectations, no angle. That's rare. The words hit harder than she expected. She was used to being underestimated, dismissed because she was a mechanic, because she didn't fit into boardrooms or high society events. But this time, she was being seen as something more than she had ever allowed herself to believe. She exhaled sharply. I don't want to be a charity case, Nate. He chuckled. Do I seem like the kind of guy who does charity? This is an investment. I want to see you succeed, but more than that, I want you to do it your way. Sienna held his gaze. She didn't know if this was a trap, but deep down, she knew this might be the chance to change her life. Finally, she set the envelope down. I need time to think. Nate nodded, not pushing her. I don't need an answer right now, but I hope you give it real consideration. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Sienna alone with the biggest decision of her life. Sienna didn't make her decision right away. She spent the entire night thinking it over, weighing the risks and possibilities. She had never been the kind of person to rely on anyone else. But maybe this wasn't reliance. Maybe it was a real opportunity. The next morning, she called Nate. You still want to invest? His voice was deep, but there was a hint of amusement. I never take back an offer. Sienna took a slow breath. Good, because I'm saying yes. And just like that, a new chapter in her life began. The next few months were a whirlwind of change. Her once small garage expanded, new equipment was installed, and doors she never thought possible began to open. But the biggest change wasn't in the shop itself. It was in her and Nate. At first, they were just business partners. Nate provided the funding, and Sienna brought the vision. But the more they worked together, the more things started to shift. Sometimes, she found herself laughing at his dry sense of humor, something she never expected from a CEO who seemed all business. Sometimes Nate lingered at the shop longer than necessary, as if he was looking for an excuse to stay just a little while more. One evening they were going over the final blueprints, long past a reasonable working hour. Sienna stretched her arms and sighed. I need coffee. You want one? Nate tilted his head, a small smirk forming. If I say no, would that make you stop working? She laughed, shaking her head. Not a chance. And in that moment, something shifted. They weren't just partners anymore. This wasn't just business. As Sienna met Nate's gaze, she realized this was something else entirely. And she wasn't sure she could stop it from happening. At first, Sienna thought everything between her and Nate was strictly business. But the longer they worked together, the lines between them started to blur. It was the small moments, the ones that made her heart beat just a little too fast. The first time was when they were working under the hood of a car. She was leaning in, tightening a bolt, when Nate reached for a wrench, and his hand lightly brushed against her back. It was the briefest touch. But Sienna froze for just a second, and Nate immediately pulled back, as if he hadn't expected it either. "Sorry," he murmured, his voice lower than usual. She swallowed hard. "It's fine." But it wasn't. Not really. The second time, they were going through the inventory list. She was holding the clipboard, but when she reached for a pen, her fingers brushed against his hand. Both of them stilled. Nate cleared his throat and withdrew his hand first, but Sienna could still feel the lingering warmth of his skin on hers. The third time, and possibly the most unsettling, happened late one evening. They were reviewing the final layout for the garage, Sienna standing by the workbench, her palm resting on the table as she examined the blueprint. Nate stepped in beside her, leaning slightly to point at a section. He was close, too close. She could feel his breath against her hair. Sienna stiffened. Nate must have noticed, because for a second he hesitated, like he was deciding whether to step back or stay right where he was. Then, slowly, he took a step away, giving her space. But that space didn't erase what had just happened, because between them, something was there. Something neither of them was ready to admit. Everything was going better than Sienna had ever imagined. The garage was thriving, business was booming, and Nate, he was still there. Not just as an investor, but as a part of her life. But then, reality came crashing in. One morning as Sienna walked into the shop, she spotted Nate standing outside by the parking lot, phone pressed tightly to his ear. His expression wasn't the same as usual. He wasn't calm, he wasn't confident. He looked tense. She stopped in her tracks, watching him. When the call ended, he turned, meeting her gaze. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. Nate sighed, running a hand through his hair. "My board wants me to pull out of this project." Her brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" "Ellis Automotive is expanding internationally. They don't want me wasting time on a small garage in Maplewood." Something tightened in her chest. "So, what are you going to do?" Nate was quiet for a long moment before finally admitting, "I don't know." That hurt more than she expected. Sienna took a slow breath, forcing herself to stay composed. "If this isn't where you're meant to be, I won't ask you to stay. But don't leave just because they tell you to." Nate looked at her, his gaze searching hers. "Do you really want me to leave?" She bit her lip, torn. "I don't want that. But I don't want you to give up everything for me either." The silence between them grew heavy. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about them. And for the first time, neither of them knew how to hold on to it. Sienna never thought she'd be facing a choice like this. For years, she had fought to prove she could stand on her own, that she didn't need anyone's help. But now, she was standing in front of the one man who had believed in her in a way no one ever had, and he might have to leave. She didn't want that. But love wasn't about selfishly holding someone back. The next day, Sienna walked into Nate's office in Chicago. He looked up, clearly surprised. "Sienna?" She took a deep breath and set a folder down on his desk. "I don't want this to be just your investment. I want it to be ours, 50-50. No boss, no employee, just two people building something real." Nate stared at her for a long moment before a slow smile formed. "You're sure about this?" She nodded. "If you stay, I want it to be a choice, not a sacrifice. Something we build together." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood up, stepping closer. "You're making a bet on me, you know that?" Sienna smirked. "First time I've ever bet on someone, and I don't think I'll lose." Nate chuckled before pulling her in for a kiss. No more hesitation, no more doubts. It was the only answer he needed. 3 months later, Reed's Auto Haven officially reopened under its new name, bigger and stronger than ever. This time, it wasn't just hers, it was theirs. At the grand opening, surrounded by congratulations and flashing lights, Sienna turned to Nate, raising an eyebrow. "You realize, don't you, we did it?" Nate smiled, wrapping an arm around her waist. "No, you did it. I was just smart enough to bet on you." She laughed, leaning into him, feeling for the first time that she had finally found where she belonged. And this time, she didn't have to do it alone. And that was the story of Sienna and Nate, a story about opportunity, trust, and love found in the most unexpected places. Sienna started with nothing but a small garage and a dream that felt too far away. She never imagined that one chance encounter could change everything. But Nate saw something in her that she hadn't yet seen in herself, that she wasn't just talented, but that she deserved more. He didn't save her, and she didn't change him. They were simply two people who fit, helping each other see what they had never realized about themselves. Now, their garage isn't just about cars, it's about second chances, about proving that sometimes the right risks lead to the best rewards. Because sometimes opportunity doesn't come from perfect plans, but from life's most unexpected moments. What do you think about Sienna and Nate's story? Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. If you love heartfelt stories about love, fate, and second chances, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Keep believing in kindness, love, and the unexpected magic of life, because sometimes love and dreams come from places you'd never expect. See you in the next story. The luxurious penthouse glowed under the soft evening light, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of New York City's dazzling skyline. Inside, the atmosphere was anything but serene. Ryan Carter, a celebrated architect known for designing some of the city's most iconic skyscrapers, stood with his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his expression cold and distant. Across from him, his parents, Eleanor and Richard Carter, sat on an immaculate white sofa, their demeanor as rigid as the polished marble floors beneath their feet. "Ryan," Eleanor began, her tone sharp and calculated, "this isn't up for debate. You'll marry Olivia Harrington next month, and that's final." Ryan's jaw tightened, his heart sinking like a stone. Olivia Harrington. Just a name, another lifeless pawn in their endless games. Did they really think his life could be bartered like a piece of property? She was a stranger, just another pawn in the endless games of New York's elite. "This is absurd," Ryan shot back, his voice low but edged with anger. "I'm not a bargaining chip in one of your business mergers." His father, Richard, looked up from his whiskey glass, his deep voice rumbling like thunder. "You don't have a choice. This marriage will secure the Carter name for generations to come." Ryan's heart pounded in his chest. For the first time, he realized just how trapped he really was. Ryan's knuckles turned white as he clenched his fists, pacing back and forth across the penthouse living room like a caged animal. The weight of his parents' ultimatum pressed down on him like a boulder he couldn't escape. "You think you can control my life like this?" Ryan snapped, his voice rising with every word. "Forcing me to marry someone I don't even know? For what? A business deal?" Eleanor's icy gaze followed his movements, her posture unyielding. "This isn't about you, Ryan. It's about the family, about preserving the Carter legacy. Olivia Harrington is the perfect match for you. She's from a reputable family, smart, poised, and most importantly, someone who can elevate our status." Ryan scoffed bitterly, stopping to face his mother. "Elevate our status? This isn't about me at all, is it? It's about the company. About your obsession with power and appearances." "Watch your tone," Richard interjected sharply, his deep voice cutting through the room like a blade. He set his glass down with a heavy thud, rising to his full height. "You're acting like a child. You've been given everything. Everything, Ryan. A name, a career, a future. The least you can do is honor your responsibilities to this family." Ryan's chest heaved as he glared at his father. "Responsibilities? What about my happiness? Or does that not matter as long as your precious reputation is intact?" Richard's expression darkened, his voice low and final. "If you refuse to go through with this marriage, you'll be cut off. No trust fund, no shares in the company, nothing. You can walk out that door and fend for yourself." Eleanor nodded curtly, her expression unmoved. "It's your choice, Ryan. Do the right thing or lose everything." The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan's shoulders slumped slightly as he turned away, staring out the massive windows at the city below. His voice, when it finally came, was hollow. "This conversation is over," he muttered. "Get out." Eleanor and Richard exchanged a glance before gathering their things. The soft click of the closing door echoed through the penthouse, leaving Ryan alone, drowning in the weight of his family's expectations. The cold night air bit at Ryan's face as he wandered the streets of New York City, his footsteps echoing on the empty sidewalks. He shoved his hands deeper into the pockets of his tailored coat, his mind racing with the weight of his parents' ultimatum. "Cut off," he muttered to himself, the words like a bitter taste in his mouth. The life his family had built for him, the security he'd always known. It could all vanish if he didn't comply. But the idea of marrying Olivia Harrington, someone he barely knew, felt like a prison sentence. Turning a corner into a quieter street, Ryan's steps faltered. A soft, delicate melody drifted through the night air, carried by the haunting sound of a violin. The music was raw, almost aching, and it drew him in like a moth to flame. His eyes landed on a young woman sitting on the cold pavement, her back leaning against the wall of a dimly lit building. She played with such focus and intensity that she seemed oblivious to the world around her. Her worn jeans and oversized coat did little to protect her from the chill, but her music held a warmth that softened the harsh night. When the final note lingered and faded, the woman lowered her violin and glanced up, her green eyes catching Ryan's gaze. They were striking, wary yet unbroken. "Spare any change?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. Ryan hesitated, taking a moment to really look at her. She was young, maybe in her mid-20s, with messy dark hair peeking out from under her knit beanie. A frayed backpack sat beside her, a sign of a life spent on the move. "What's your name?" Ryan asked, ignoring her request. The woman frowned, clearly unaccustomed to strangers asking questions. "Emily," she replied after a pause, clutching her violin case protectively. Ryan studied her, the raw strength in her green eyes at odds with the delicate, aching melody he'd just heard. For the first time in what felt like years, something stirred inside him. A spark of curiosity, of connection. Ryan crouched down slightly, his gaze level with hers. "Emily," he repeated slowly, as if testing the sound of her name. A wild idea was already taking shape in his mind, something so outlandish that it made his heart pound. "What if I told you I could change your life?" he said suddenly. Emily's brow furrowed, her suspicion immediate. "I'd say you've been watching too many movies." Ryan let out a short, humorless laugh. "Fair. But I'm serious. What if I could give you a place to live, food, clothes, everything you need to start fresh?" Emily narrowed her eyes, gripping the violin case tighter. "And what's the catch?" Ryan straightened, shoving his hands back into his coat pockets. "You marry me. For a year." Emily stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. "Excuse me?" "I know how it sounds," Ryan said quickly, his voice firm despite the absurdity of his words. "It's not what you think. It's just a business arrangement. You'd live with me, pretend to be my wife, and in return, I'll give you everything you need to start over. After a year, we'll part ways. No strings attached." Emily shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "This is ridiculous. You don't even know me." "That's the point," Ryan countered, his tone softening. "You're not part of my world. You don't care about my family's name, my career, or my money. You're real." Emily's expression faltered, the weight of his words lingering in the cold air. She looked down at her hands, her thoughts swirling. Ryan could see her hesitation, the tug-of-war between pride and desperation. "I don't know," she said finally, breaking the silence. "It sounds insane." "I get it," Ryan admitted. "But it's not a scam. You'll be protected. Legally, financially, whatever you need. I'll make sure of it." Emily studied him, her guarded expression softening slightly. The offer was outrageous, but so was her reality. What did she really have to lose? "Fine," she said at last, her voice steady. "But if this goes sideways, I'm out." Ryan nodded, relief flickering across his face. "Fair enough." They shook hands to seal the bizarre agreement, neither of them fully aware of just how much that moment would change their lives. Emily stood in the center of Ryan's penthouse, her fingers clutching the strap of her worn backpack as her gaze darted around the massive space. The floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a breathtaking view of New York City's glittering skyline, but all she could think about was how out of place she felt. "This place is ridiculous," she muttered under her breath, her voice echoing faintly against the marble floors. Ryan smirked as he set her violin case down carefully near the couch. "You'll get used to it." Emily shot him a skeptical look. "I doubt it." It didn't take long for the awkwardness of their arrangement to set in. The penthouse, with its sleek furniture and pristine decor, might as well have been a palace to Emily. She avoided touching anything for fear of breaking it. Meanwhile, Ryan, used to a life of structure and control, struggled to adjust to Emily's fiercely independent nature. The next morning, Ryan found Emily in the kitchen, standing over the stove with a spatula in hand, squinting at a frying pan filled with charred eggs. "What are you doing?" he asked, trying not to laugh as he leaned against the doorway. Emily huffed in frustration, scraping the burned mess into the trash. "Making breakfast. Obviously." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "I didn't realize you had a vendetta against eggs." She shot him a glare, her lips twitching despite herself. "Not everyone has a personal chef, Mr. Perfect." "Well, we do have one," Ryan replied casually. "You know, for situations exactly like this." Emily turned back to the stove, mumbling under her breath. "I can cook. I just need to get used to this stupid stove." Their days were filled with small clashes like this. Emily refused to let the housekeeper do her laundry, insisting on doing it herself, which led to a series of confused glances from the staff. Ryan watched her with a mix of amusement and exasperation as she struggled to navigate a world she didn't belong to, at least not yet. But amidst the awkward beginnings, there were moments of surprising connection. Ryan began to notice the little things about Emily, the way she hummed quietly to herself when she thought no one was listening, or how her green eyes lit up when she looked out at the city. One evening, Ryan returned from work to find Emily sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, her violin in hand. She was plucking at the strings softly, her brow furrowed in concentration. "You know," Ryan said, startling her slightly, "there's a whole music room here. You don't have to sit on the floor." Emily glanced up, her expression stubborn. "The acoustics are better here." Ryan chuckled, shaking his head as he walked away. "Whatever you say, Emily." For all their differences, they were slowly, unintentionally, finding a rhythm. Neither of them would admit it, but the walls they had built around themselves were starting to crack. As the weeks passed, the once palpable tension between Ryan and Emily began to shift. Their exchanges grew less sharp, their silences less awkward. Slowly, they were beginning to understand each other. One rainy evening, Ryan returned to the penthouse earlier than usual. He was about to call out to Emily when he heard something. Soft, haunting music drifting through the hallway. Curiosity piqued, he followed the sound to the living room, where he stopped in his tracks. Emily was at the grand piano, her fingers dancing effortlessly across the keys. The music was mesmerizing, filled with a quiet sorrow that tugged at something deep inside him. Her messy hair fell over her face as she played, completely lost in the moment. When the final note faded, Ryan cleared his throat softly. Emily flinched, her head snapping up in surprise. "I didn't know you could play," Ryan said, stepping closer. His voice was softer than usual, the usual edge replaced with genuine curiosity. Emily brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, looking sheepish. "I don't, really. Not like a professional or anything." Ryan tilted his head, a small smile tugging at his lips. That didn't sound like someone who doesn't know how to play. She shrugged, her fingers lightly brushing over the keys. "It's just something my mom taught me when I was little. Music was our thing." Her voice softened, the words trailing off. Ryan studied her for a moment, sensing the weight behind her words. "You don't talk about your family much." Emily's smile faltered, her gaze dropping to her hands. "Not much to talk about. It's just me now." The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Ryan sat down in the armchair across from her, leaning back as he regarded her carefully. "You're talented. Why don't you play more often?" Emily shook her head, laughing softly but without humor. "It doesn't matter. Playing the piano doesn't change anything. It doesn't pay bills or put a roof over your head." "It could," Ryan said, his voice firm, "if you let it." Emily's brow furrowed, her green eyes narrowing slightly. "What's that supposed to mean?" Ryan leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "You have talent, Emily. Real talent. People would pay to hear you play. You could—" "Stop," she cut him off, her voice tense. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Act like you know me, like you understand." She stood abruptly, turning away. "You don't know what it's like to lose everything, to have no one to fall back on." Ryan's expression softened as he watched her. "You're right. I don't know what that's like. But I know what it feels like to not be seen for who you really are." Emily froze, her shoulders stiffening. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she turned back around, her expression guarded, but curious. "What do you mean?" Ryan exhaled, leaning back. "My parents don't care about me. Not really. I'm just another piece on their chessboard. Everything I've ever done, every success I've had, it's never been enough for them." Emily's eyes softened as she looked at him. In that moment, she saw beyond the wealthy architect and into someone who was just as lost as she was. "I guess we're both running from something," she said quietly, sitting back down at the piano. Ryan nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "Maybe. But at least you're honest about it." That night, the walls between them cracked a little more. Emily didn't play again, but for the first time, she didn't feel so alone. And Ryan, as he sat in the quiet of the penthouse, realized that Emily's presence was slowly changing something in him, something he hadn't even realized was missing. The tension in the Carter penthouse had all but disappeared in recent weeks. Emily and Ryan settled into a rhythm, their once cold transactional relationship replaced by something warmer, something neither of them dared to define. But that fragile calm shattered one crisp afternoon when Ryan's mother, Eleanor Carter, decided to take matters into her own hands. In her expansive study, Eleanor sat at her polished mahogany desk, a thick file spread open before her. The headline splashed across one page read, "Harrington families fall from grace. Fraud and scandal rock the industry." A younger photo of Emily stared back at her, alongside another name, Emily Harrington, daughter of Lawrence Harrington, a once powerful businessman disgraced in a high-profile corporate scandal. Eleanor's lips curled into a thin smile as she picked up the phone. "Ryan," she said when he answered, her tone clipped and ice-cold, "you need to come to the house. It's about your wife." Later that evening, Ryan stormed into Eleanor's study, his expression already tense. "What is this about?" he demanded. Eleanor gestured to the open dossier on her desk. "It's about Emily," she said smoothly, satisfaction dripping from her voice. "Or should I say, Emily Harrington?" Ryan frowned, stepping closer. The name hit him like a punch to the gut. "Harrington? As in Lawrence Harrington?" "Yes," Eleanor's voice sharpened. "The same Lawrence Harrington who nearly destroyed countless lives. Your wife has been lying to you, Ryan. She's not some innocent musician. You've been played." Ryan's jaw tightened as he stared at the pages. Emily's face, her father's name, the scandal, it all swirled together in his mind, a storm he wasn't prepared for. "She didn't tell me," he murmured, his voice unsteady. "Of course she didn't," Eleanor replied, her tone venomous. "This is her chance to claw her way back into society, to use you and the Carter name to restore what her family lost." Ryan shook his head, anger and confusion bubbling to the surface. "You don't know that." "Don't be naive, Ryan," Eleanor shot back. "She's not who you think she is." When Ryan returned to the penthouse, the weight of Eleanor's words hung heavy on his shoulders. Emily was sketching quietly at the dining table, her violin case propped up beside her. She glanced up when he entered, her face lighting up with a faint smile, until she saw his expression. "What's wrong?" she asked cautiously. Ryan didn't answer at first. He tossed the dossier onto the table in front of her, the pages fanning out like a bomb waiting to explode. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice was sharp, colder than she'd ever heard. Emily froze, her gaze dropping to the file. She didn't need to look to know what it contained. "Ryan, why didn't you tell me who you really are?" he snapped, his voice sharper than shattered glass. "Emily Harrington, your father, your past. You've been lying to me this entire time." Emily froze, the words hitting her like a slap. Her face paled, but her gaze never wavered as she slowly stood, fists clenched at her sides. "I didn't lie to you," she said, her voice trembling but defiant. "I didn't tell you because it doesn't matter. Not to me." Ryan scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping him as he turned away. "It matters to me. Everything I thought I knew about you, everything we built." "It was all a lie?" "It does matter," Ryan shot back, his frustration boiling over. "Everything I thought I knew about you, it's all a lie." Emily stood, her voice rising to meet his. "You think I wanted this? You think I chose to be his daughter? That name ruined my life, Ryan. I've spent years trying to escape it. It's not who I am." Ryan's chest heaved as he stared at her, the anger warring with something he couldn't name, hurt, maybe even betrayal. "So what was this, Emily? Convenient? Did you think I'd never find out?" Her green eyes flashed with pain as she grabbed her violin case, shoving it onto her shoulder. "You don't get it," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I never wanted this. You're the one who came to me, remember?" "Emily, but she was already moving, her steps quick and determined. She paused briefly at the door, her voice trembling as she spoke without turning around. "At least I know who I am, Ryan. Can you say the same?" And with that, she was gone. The penthouse felt impossibly empty in her absence. Ryan sank onto the couch, running a hand through his hair as the weight of what just happened settled over him. The penthouse felt like a shell without Emily. The quiet was suffocating, the city lights outside mocking Ryan with their distant brilliance. He sat at the grand piano where she'd once played, her haunting melody still echoing in his memory. Ryan's mind replayed their last exchange over and over. "At least I know who I am. Can you say the same?" Those words cut deeper than he cared to admit. He had accused Emily of hiding her identity, but he was no better, trapped in the expectations of a family that refused to see him for who he was. In his anger, he had pushed away the only person who had ever truly been real with him. "I'm such an idiot," he muttered to himself, standing abruptly. Desperate to make amends, Ryan turned to the one thing that had always defined Emily: her music. Over the next 2 weeks, he poured his energy into a plan. He made calls, pulled strings, and used every connection he had to arrange something extraordinary. If Emily wouldn't let him speak to her heart directly, he would speak to her through the one thing she loved most: her music. Emily sat on the small bed in her rented room, her violin case open beside her. She had spent the last few weeks trying to rebuild her life, playing gigs at coffee shops and small venues. Though the work was steady, a part of her felt hollow. She tried to push thoughts of Ryan away, but memories of their time together lingered, like a stubborn shadow. One afternoon, there was a knock at her door. Frowning, she opened it to find a deliveryman holding a handwritten invitation. "Emily, you deserve to be seen, to be heard. Please come to the Grand West Theater at 7 p.m. tomorrow." Her heart pounded as she read the note. Confusion warred with curiosity, but something inside her, something hopeful, compelled her to go. The next evening, Emily stepped into the Grand West Theater, her breath catching in her throat. The space was stunning, lit by soft golden lights that bathed the grand piano at center stage. In the audience, scattered among the rows, were familiar faces: musicians, industry professionals, and others who had once been out of her reach. Before she could process it all, Ryan appeared on stage. He looked nervous, his hands shoved into his pockets, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," Ryan began, his eyes locking with Emily's in the dimly lit room. "But I couldn't let you walk away without showing you what you mean, to me and to the world." He gestured to the piano. "This stage is yours, Emily. You deserve this chance. I just hope you'll let me be part of it." Tears welled in Emily's eyes as the weight of his words sank in. He had done all of this for her. Emily stood frozen in the center aisle of the theater, her heart pounding in her chest. The grand piano on stage seemed to call to her, and Ryan's words echoed in her mind: "You deserve this chance." For a long moment she couldn't move, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. Then, slowly, she stepped forward. The room was silent as she approached the stage, her hands trembling as they brushed against the smooth keys of the piano. She looked up once, meeting Ryan's hopeful gaze, before taking a deep breath. The first notes were soft, tentative. But as the melody began to flow, Emily lost herself in the music. It was raw and beautiful, a piece of her heart laid bare for the world to hear. Her fingers danced across the keys with the same passion that had once captivated Ryan in the penthouse. When the final note faded, the theater erupted in applause. The sound washed over Emily like a wave, filling the hollow space inside her that she hadn't even realized was still there. She stood, blinking back tears, as members of the audience approached, shaking her hand and praising her talent. Ryan watched from the side of the stage, his chest tightening with pride. When Emily finally turned to him, her green eyes glistening, he stepped forward. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I did," Ryan replied softly. "Because I was wrong. About you. About everything. And I needed you to know that I see you, Emily. Not your name, not your past. You." Emily stared at him for a moment, as if searching for any hint of insincerity. But all she found was warmth and a quiet, steady truth. "You really are stubborn," she said with a small smile. Ryan chuckled, relief washing over him. "So, are you?" He held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Emily took it. Months later, Emily and Ryan stood together in a quiet garden, surrounded by close friends and family. Fairy lights hung from the trees above, casting a warm glow over the intimate ceremony. "I can't believe this started with a business deal," Emily teased as they shared their first dance under the stars. Ryan grinned, his hand tightening around hers. "The best deal I ever made." As they moved in perfect harmony, Emily rested her head on his shoulder, smiling softly. Their journey had been far from simple, but through forgiveness, trust, and love, they had found something real. Above them, the stars shone brightly, a silent witness to a story that had begun with desperation, but ended with hope, and a love neither of them had expected. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor echoed through the sterile silence, bouncing off the stark white walls of the hospital room. A dim bedside lamp cast faint, flickering shadows on the ceiling, shifting gently with each shallow breath. Isla Carter drifted in and out of consciousness, trapped in a limbo where reality bled into an endless void. Her mind was hazy, her senses dulled, wrapped in a strange, weightless numbness. She tried to open her eyes, but her lids were impossibly heavy, as if something was anchoring them shut. A dull, throbbing pain pulsed through her skull, spreading to her numb limbs. Isla attempted to move, only to find her body unresponsive, as if she had been lying still for an eternity. A soft breeze drifted in from a slightly open window, carrying the delicate scent of flowers, but it did nothing to quell the eerie emptiness swirling inside her. She took a slow, shaky breath, trying to grasp onto something, anything, but there was nothing. Just a vast, blank space where her memories should have been. No images, no recollections, no names. Panic crept into her chest, wrapping around her lungs like an iron grip. She clutched the hospital sheets with trembling fingers, trying to anchor herself. Who am I? Why am I here? The door suddenly creaked open. A tall figure stepped inside. The man was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that fit his strong frame with effortless precision. His footsteps were deliberate, steady, exuding an air of quiet dominance. His face, sharp as if sculpted from marble, was breathtakingly perfect, yet unnervingly void of life, like a statue with eyes that saw too much. His eyes, an icy shade of blue, were deep and unreadable, hiding secrets beneath their frozen depths. But what unsettled Isla most wasn't his striking appearance. It was his gaze. Cold, distant, completely devoid of emotion. He regarded her with the same detachment one might have for an object rather than a person. And then, in a deep, measured voice, he spoke. "You're awake." There was no relief, no affection, no concern in his tone, only an unsettling calmness, controlled and unfeeling. Isla tried to speak, but her throat was dry and parched. It took several moments before she could whisper the only question echoing in her mind. "Who are you?" A silence stretched between them. His eyes flickered, as if something stirred within him, but it was gone in an instant. His expression returned to its unnerving neutrality. And then he finally answered, "I'm your husband." A wave of cold terror washed over Isla. Husband? No, that wasn't possible. She couldn't even remember her own name. How could she possibly believe she was married to a man who felt like a stranger? The car glided smoothly along the cobblestone road, flanked by towering trees whose shadows stretched long under the fading sunlight. The golden hues of dusk bathed the world in a dreamlike glow, yet Isla felt no warmth from it. Seated in the back, she watched the scenery blur past the window, but nothing sparked even the faintest sense of familiarity. Beside her, Nikolai Laurent remained silent. One hand rested casually on the steering wheel, his sharp gaze fixed ahead, unreadable as ever. He never glanced her way, never spoke a word. The silence was suffocating, thick with unspoken tension. As the car slowed to a halt, Isla held her breath. Before her stood Ravenshire Manor, a colossal estate, grand and imposing, with towering stone walls, arched windows, and intricately carved columns. A place that could have belonged to royalty. Isla stepped out of the car, her gaze trailing up the vast mansion. It was breathtaking in its perfection, too perfect, yet it felt empty, soulless, cold. Crossing the threshold, she stepped into the grand foyer. The glow of the crystal chandeliers was too bright, casting long, unnatural shadows that seemed to stretch toward her. The air smelled of polished wood and something colder. Emptiness. But this wasn't a home. There were no wedding photos lining the walls. No personal belongings. No trace of a life shared within these walls. A row of servants stood in formation along the corridor, their postures stiff, their expressions unreadable. Not one of them smiled. Not one of them welcomed her back. Not one of them met her eyes. The unease settled deep in Isla's bones. A middle-aged woman, likely the housekeeper, stepped forward, her voice polite yet strangely strained. "Welcome home, madam." The words made Isla stiffen. Madam? It felt foreign, unfamiliar, like a title that belonged to someone else, a name spoken in a play she didn't remember starring in. She turned to Nikolai, hoping for reassurance, but he merely gave a curt nod, then walked away, disappearing into the vastness of the mansion without another word. Leaving her standing there, alone. Was this really her home? The air inside Ravenshire Manor was thick with an unshakable sense of emptiness. Isla wandered through its endless hallways, yet every room, every corridor felt soulless, like spaces never truly lived in. Nothing here felt like it belonged to her. There were no clothes in the wardrobe that carried a familiar scent. No notebooks or sketches that hinted at her past. No trace of a life she supposedly shared within these walls. Each passing day only deepened her unease. Nikolai remained distant, his responses evasive, his presence fleeting. Everything changed the moment Isla found the locked drawer in the library. She pulled at it, it wouldn't budge. Why was a drawer inside her own home locked? Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on a small ring of keys hanging discreetly on a bookshelf. Glancing around to make sure she was alone, she quickly grabbed one and tested it. Click. The drawer slid open. Inside lay a stack of documents, but what caught her attention first was a thick, official-looking paper stamped with a legal seal. A divorce agreement. Isla's breath hitched as she pulled out the document, her pulse hammering. Her eyes locked onto the printed words. Party A, Isla Carter. Then lower. Her own signature inked in steady, deliberate strokes. As if she had meant it. Her hands trembled. She had wanted a divorce? Why had Nikolai never mentioned this? It felt as if she was reading about someone else's life, a version of herself she no longer remembered. She couldn't live in this darkness any longer. She needed answers. With unsteady fingers, Isla reached for her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Most of the names meant nothing to her, but then one name made her heart clench. Camille Evans. She didn't remember who Camille was, but something inside her whispered that this woman held the key to her past. She pressed the call button. After a few rings, a hesitant voice answered. "Hello, who is this?" Isla took a deep breath. She wasn't sure what to say, but finally, she whispered, "Camille, it's me." Isla. A long silence. Then Camille's voice trembled with disbelief. "Ian, oh my God, you're alive?" A cold shiver ran down Isla's spine. She hadn't just lost her memory. She had disappeared from everyone's life. Isla's grip tightened around the phone. She couldn't let this moment slip away. "Camille, it's really me. I need your help." A sharp inhale echoed through the line. Camille was still in shock, but when she spoke again, her voice was laced with concern. "Isla, do you even know how long you've been missing?" Isla frowned. "Missing?" Before she could respond, Camille continued, her tone dark. "Everyone thought you were dead. You vanished right after you told me you had proof that you were innocent." Isla's heartbeat pounded violently. "Innocent of what? What are you talking about?" Isla's voice shook. A long pause, then Camille whispered, "Vivienne Moreau destroyed your marriage?" The name sliced through Isla's mind like a blade. A stranger's name, yet it sent a shiver down her spine. Who is she? Nikolai Zek. Everything started falling into place. Vivienne had returned after Nikolai's marriage. She had orchestrated a trap, fabricating fake evidence, false messages, all designed to make Nikolai believe that Isla had betrayed him. And he believed it. Camille's voice was edged with bitterness. A sharp pain twisted in Isla's chest. Nikolai had never questioned it, never given her a chance to explain. He had condemned her without hesitation. But the worst part was yet to come. Camille took a shaky breath before adding, "You figured out the truth, and the moment you were about to meet me to expose everything, you had your accident." A cold chill ran down Isla's spine. That accident? It wasn't an accident. Someone had wanted her gone, and there was only one person who had the motive. Vivienne Moreau. Isla had no other choice. She had to confront the truth, and more importantly, she had to make Nikolai face it too. She might not remember Vivienne Moreau, but she knew one thing for certain. Someone had wanted her gone. And now she had proof. Her chance came sooner than expected, a charity gala hosted by Nikolai himself. Isla knew that whoever was behind everything would be there. That evening, as she stepped into the grand ballroom, a hush fell over the crowd. They had thought she was gone forever. They were wrong. Among the hundreds of faces in the room, Isla searched for a reaction, a sign of guilt, a flicker of fear. And then she saw a blonde woman in a striking red gown, standing beside Nikolai. The woman froze the moment she saw Isla. Isla didn't recognize her, but she recognized Isla. Taking a steady breath, Isla walked forward, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. She didn't know who this woman was, but her reaction had already exposed her. "You know who I am, don't you?" Isla's voice was calm, yet razor sharp. The woman composed herself quickly, forcing a polite smile. "I'm afraid you're mistaken. I don't know you." But Isla was ready. She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen, revealing the fabricated messages Camille had found, all sent to Nikolai, accusing Isla of betrayal. "These messages came from your number," Isla stated, her voice unwavering. A ripple of tension spread through the room. Whispers filled the space. Nikolai's eyes were locked onto the screen. The woman, Vivienne, tightened her grip on her wineglass. "You have no proof that I sent them," Vivienne scoffed. Without a word, Isla placed a stack of documents onto a nearby table. Bank records, proving Vivienne had paid someone to fabricate the evidence. Vivienne's mask cracked. This is ridiculous, she snapped. But Isla wasn't done. Reaching into her purse, she pulled out the final piece of evidence, a recording Camille had recovered from an anonymous source. Vivian's own voice echoed through the silent room. "You don't need to kill her. Just make sure she disappears for a while. Nikolai will come back to me. He always does." Nikolai went rigid. Vivienne turned pale. "You recorded me?" she shrieked, her voice piercing through the air. But Isla only turned to Nikolai. "You still believe her, Nikolai?" Nikolai was speechless. His fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. His eyes remained fixed on the documents, on the phone screen, on the undeniable truth before him. Vivian looked at him, desperate. "Nikolai, you can't believe her. Everything I did for you." But Nikolai wasn't listening anymore. His gaze was locked on Isla, the woman he had once loved with everything he had, the same woman he had cast aside without a second thought. She wasn't pleading, she wasn't crying, she was simply empty. The silence between them was too vast, too unforgiving. Security dragged Vivian away, her shrill screams echoing across the ballroom. But Isla no longer cared. She turned away. She had cleared her name, she had proven her innocence, but did it even matter anymore? "Isla, wait!" Nikolai's voice broke through the air. His hand closed around her wrist. She stopped, but she didn't turn back. "I was wrong." His voice was raw. "I was wrong about everything." Isla took a deep breath. She had waited so long to hear those words. But now, they meant nothing. "If you loved me," Isla's voice was quiet, yet it cut deeper than any betrayal. "Then why was I never enough for you to believe in?" Nikolai had no answer. She pulled her hand free from his grasp, gently yet firmly, and then she walked away, without looking back. This time, she was the one leaving him behind. Nikolai couldn't forget the moment Isla walked away. In the days that followed, Ravenshire Manor felt empty, cold, just like his heart. He hadn't lost her because she wanted to leave. He lost her because he never fought to make her stay. He sought out Camille, Isla's closest friend, but her words cut deeper than he expected. "You could have believed in her, Nikolai, but you didn't." She was right. Meanwhile, Isla left England and moved to Venice, a place untouched by memories of the man who had broken her heart. She took a job at a small publishing house, built a quiet life, and learned to love herself again. She told herself she was fine, that she had moved on. But on silent nights, when the moon reflected off the canals, there was always an ache in her chest. 3 months passed, and Nikolai realized success meant nothing without Isla by his side. He couldn't change the past, but he could do something he had failed to do before: fight to win her back. So he went to Venice. Not to beg for forgiveness, not to demand her love, but to prove that this time, he would never let her go again. Isla. She froze at the sound of his voice. Slowly she turned, and there he was. Nikolai. But he was no longer the man she once knew. His blue eyes weren't cold anymore. They held regret, pain, and something deeper: hope. He had come for her. "I lost you once." His voice was raw, unsteady. "I can't lose you again." Isla studied him for a long moment. She had learned to live without him, but had she ever truly been happy? "We can't go back to what we were, Nikolai," she said softly. He didn't look disappointed. Instead, a slow smile curved his lips. "Then let's write a new story. No more secrets, no more doubts, only 2 souls learning to love again, the right way this time." From that day on, Nikolai didn't leave. He pursued Isla all over again. Not with empty promises or wealth, but with small, sincere actions. He showed up at the cafe where she worked, quietly sipping espresso at a nearby table. He sent her handwritten letters, not begging for forgiveness, but simply sharing thoughts he had never been brave enough to say before. He wasn't impatient. He waited, giving Isla time, letting her see that this time he wasn't trying to make amends for his guilt. He truly wanted her in his life. The letters turned into small conversations. The conversations turned into long walks along the canals of Venice. Slowly, Isla stopped seeing Nikolai as a painful part of her past. He had changed, and so had she. One evening, beneath the soft glow of the streetlights, Nikolai finally asked, "If I asked you to marry me again, would you even consider it?" Isla hesitated. "I don't know, Nikolai." She looked at him, searching. "If I say yes, will you ever doubt me again?" Isla held his gaze for a long moment. She knew now. Their love had never disappeared. It had simply lain dormant, waiting to be awakened. She didn't hesitate. "I would." 3 months later, at a villa overlooking Lake Como, Isla walked down an aisle of white roses toward the man she had fallen in love with twice. This time, there were no lies, no pain, only love, deeper, stronger, and unbreakable. Nikolai took her hands in his blue eyes filled with nothing but devotion. "I promise I will never lose you again." Isla smiled, her heart full. "And I promise I will always trust you." Two souls, once torn apart by doubt and deception, had found their way back to each other. This time, they would write a perfect ending. And their love was reborn.